Welcome everybody. Welcome to the East Stream today. Today I'm going way early because it is a US holiday and I'd like to do stuff. So, it's currently, like 9 a.m. here in the sunny Utah, 9:07. Cool. But anyway, if y'all want to see what's on the agenda for today, I'll show you the command you can do if you do this not hashtag, I always say that. Bang working on just like that. You get to see a link to basically this. It goes here. And it shows you the stuff that we're going to be talking about today. If no one has any questions. If you have questions, of course, post them and I will try to cover them as best as I can. Otherwise, you can see this and I'm going to try my best to get through what's under today. So yes, very nice. So I imagine that today will probably be 2 or 3 hours, something like that. If you're joining from Facebook or YouTube, you do get a more interactive experience if you're on Twitch. So if you go to twitch.tv/Carlos Kidman, that would take you to the main thing. So I can see it much easier. For example, things on YouTube and Facebook I don't see as well. So just so you are aware. But otherwise, the two big topics for today. The first one from Dilip, thank you so much for posting the question. They were curious about how to set up a Python project in VS Code, what extensions are required, how to basically, and currently in my stream I'm kind of just coding all the time, right? So it'd be nice to it'll be nice to take a step back and say, here's how you actually set it up from scratch. If you yourself want to follow along or would like to clone one of our projects and contribute, or maybe you're just learning. And in that case, if you're just learning, this will also help you as well. From there, we had another person ask, how do I automate a dynamic web page? And they provided an example as well. So we'll actually do a little bit of web automation with Python as well. And I think with that, if there's time, we'll get to these questions too, because they're pretty interesting. Hopefully Vern joins. Vern, if you're here, boop, boop. We'll get to, because I don't know what the interview questions were. So, I mean, a lot of this stuff, this and this, I'm going to find out on the fly what they are. I don't know what the example is yet. So it should be interesting to see me have to come up with solutions on the fly. So with that said, let's go into how you set up a Python project from scratch. Now I do have a YouTube video for this already, but it goes into a very my preferred setup, which is a little more advanced. So I'm going to try to be as tool agnostic as possible and just say, here's the things you need to set up Python if you would like to start programming in Python. So let's get to it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new repository. And I like doing this. I have a lot of repos, but I like doing this that way. If anyone is interested in seeing the code off stream, then there'll be a link here that you can go to and you can check out the code yourself, play with it and all that good stuff. So let me make one. I'm just going to call it Python stream. This will be very generic. In my experience, usually you want to call your repository names something that's lowercase with dashes between the words. So Python stream. You can put a description. This is something you can change afterward. You do not have to do this. So right now I'm going to leave it empty, but you can add a description, of course, as well. And just in case you're new to this kind of view already, this is from github.com. And GitHub is think of it as like a cloud storage, but for code. It's probably a good way to put it. So you create your code and you save it to the cloud, basically. And it's a free storage service, which is pretty cool. And it comes with a lot of pretty sweet stuff. Anyway, I'm going to make it public so that way everyone can see it. If you make it private, only you can see it and people that you give access to. So I'm going to make it public because I do want everyone, all the viewers, to be able to access this and see what's going on. Vern, I'm glad you're here because then you can ask the question about the interview you said with the API request, because I don't know what they are. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that a little bit later. Next, we can start up the repository with a few things. One of them is a README file. And a README file is basically like a welcome page to your repo. So when someone first lands on your repo, it'll essentially show them like instructions. It'll say, welcome to my Python stream repo. Here's the stuff you should know and stuff like that, right? So it's almost like a welcome page. Git Ignore is helpful because there are some files that you do not want to send up. For example, you might need to use like passwords and secrets in your code base. And that kind of stuff you don't want to just share with people willy-nilly, right? So adding a Git Ignore is a pretty good idea, I would say. And fortunately, in this dropdown, we can type in Python and we get one right here. So it's just going to add a Python Git Ignore, so I don't need to remember what stuff I got to add to it. It just does it for me, which is pretty nice. Choose a license only if you care about it. Otherwise, this part, don't worry about it too much right now. And then we'll click Create Repository. So there we have it. It generates it. And here's my README currently. It just has the name of the stuff, nothing else besides that. And I'm going to copy this now so that way I can put it into VS Code and start coding inside of this. Right now there's only two files, right? The README and the Git Ignore. The only two files that exist in this project. Now I'm a fan of a tool called Git Kraken. Some people will want to just use the command line. That's totally okay. Right? There's certain things that I like to use the command line for. There's certain things that I really like having a UI. And Git is one thing that I just like a UI because I don't know, I just like it. It makes it easier for me and it looks pretty and look at the colors, wow. Right, so I don't know, for me, I prefer it. So I just click a plus sign here, new tab. We're gonna clone a repo, the one that I just barely did. And then just paste. And clone, right? So it's that easy here. Open it up. And cool. So now, from where it was on the cloud, it was on GitHub, but now it is on my machine here locally. And so now we can open it up in VS Code. So let's switch over to VS Code. This is the code base that we were working on before. This was the API automation and testing and stuff. So we're not going to be in here anymore. I'm actually going to open. And right here, Python stream. So find wherever you cloned it to. Find that folder and then open it up. So for me, I put it inside of Carlos/code and then Python stream, right? That's where I threw it in. So click open and it's gonna open it up in here. So now we have things ready to go in VS Code, right? But in order to start programming in Python, of course, you need Python. Now I'm on a Mac myself, I'm on an M1 MacBook Pro, and it comes with Python out of the box, but it's a version that I don't really want, right? So if you want to install Python yourself, you probably just Google it, like Python download. On python.org, you have this web page here, and right on the first result, right, you just go to that and then click download Python. Currently, the latest stable version is 3.9.7. So you click on that, it would download it, open up the install wizard, very similar to all the other programs you install on your computer, right? It opens up a little window for you to click through, and then where do you want to save it to, this, and that. And once you're done saving, you're set up, and you're ready to go. You're ready to go. Back over to code. So with that, now that it's all set, I myself like to use a package manager called Poetry. Now, Python comes with one already. That's called pip. It sounds funky, but it's just P-I-P, pip. But pip has a lot of cons to it. I don't want to dive into too many details because then it's going to get, like I said, really tool specific, and I don't really want to go too much into it. So, unless you want me to, of course. So the one I like to use is called Poetry. This is a very, very cool package manager. It makes it really easy to, well, manage packages. If you're familiar with Python, you're probably used to things like virtual environments. Poetry will automatically create and manage virtual environments for you. It's very much like NPM, but for Python. So if you're familiar with JavaScript and you know NPM, well, Poetry is probably the thing that you would want to use. And so if you go to this website here, this pythonpoetry.org, they got a bunch of really good documentation for how you do things and how you use it. But I'll show you here, right now. So you're about to see it. So all you got to do in order to get this thing installed is once Python is ready to go, ignore this part. I got to update this. Ignore. Beautiful. Once Python is installed, you should be able to do something like Python -- version, and it'll show you what version of Python you have. It should be something like on the python.org website, we saw 3.9.7. And so if you installed 3.9.7, you should see Python 3.9.7, right? If you do not, try this Python 3 -- version. You're probably on a Unix or like Linux system. So do Python 3 version and you'll see this as well. If that's the case, then you're good to go. Hey, don't know if you already heard, but we recently got a software and game development category on Twitch. What? I did not know that. I did not know that. Well, now I know. Shoot. So right now I'm on the science and technology because I was the only one. But yeah, software and game development. That sounds a lot closer to what I'm actually doing. So thank you, Fletcher Quest. I'll make sure to change that. Is that like new as of like today or something? Or am I just ignorant? Am I just being ignorant? Well. Yeah, it came out a couple days ago. That's okay. Well, thank you. Now I know. I'm gonna note that in my, and I'll make sure next time I'll definitely change. So Fletcher Quest, shout out to you for being the real one, the MVP for today. Thank you, thank you. Okay. So to install Poetry, you should, if you had to do Python 3, then you have to install Poetry using pip 3 install and then Poetry. If you didn't have to say Python 3 -- version to get the 3.9.7 that you just installed, then you can just say pip, right? Pip install Poetry. You press enter, it installs Poetry, and now you can do all the Poetry things I'm about to show you. So, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to get the project started, right? In programming, we usually say like init or initialize, right? It sounds very like robotic, like initialize project. Yeah, because you want to start it, right? And so whenever you hear init or initialize, we're basically meaning like start. So the command itself is just Poetry init. And notice how I'm doing it inside of my integrated terminal inside of VS Code. I opened it with my magic fingers, but so you're like, what? How did you open that, Carlos? There's actually a few ways to open it. If you don't know how to do the shortcut or anything, I would recommend just going up here to the tippity top of the screen, clicking terminal, and clicking a new terminal. You can also see on the right hand side, and teeny tiny for you maybe. I mean, it's tiny for me. The shortcut, if you do want to open it in the cool programmer way, then you can do the keyboard and do it that way. But otherwise, yeah, now I open 2 of them, feels bad. All right, so with that open inside of VS Code, run Poetry init. And now it's going to take us through a little wizard for us to set up the project, right? The first thing is like, what do you want to call the package name? In the square brackets, that's the default. So if I want to just call it Python stream, like you see in those square brackets, then I can just press enter. If you want to give it some really cool name, like cool name, then you can. But I think the default is okay, so I'm just going to press enter. The version doesn't really matter here, it's just an example repo. The description, it's empty right now, I didn't add one. Who's the author? Well, that's me, my name. Cool. I don't have a license for this. The compatible Python versions, this is which versions of Python do people have to use in order to work with this project, right? So I know for sure that it's showing 3.9 because I used Python 3.9 to get the project started. And that's why it's suggesting that. But we can change it if we want to. The little caret thing that you're seeing there just means 3.9 or higher. That's all that is. So I'm going to press enter. That's fine. Would you like to define your main dependencies interactively? Right now I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no and no here too. Just so you can see us adding things. And then lastly, it's like I'm going to make a file that looks kind of like this. Is that okay? And yes, that's okay. And now notice, ooh, we get a fancy little file here at the project root with exactly what we specified, right? The name, Python stream, the Carlos is the person, the author, and Bada bing, bada boom. All right. So now that we got things started, we haven't installed anything yet. We've just started the project, right? There's a few things that you need to work with Python. The first one is the Python extension, right? So here on the left-hand side, there's a bunch of icons in VS Code. I will have more just because I have things for like MongoDB and Thunder Client and LiveShare and Docker and whatnot. And I have a few of them hidden right now. Don't worry about all those things. None of this is really helpful. Really, all you need is on this extensions bit. You click on this, looks like a little box thing. Click on extensions, and it's like a marketplace for, here's some apps people have written around the world to make life easier for you as a programmer. And so there's one specific one. In order to work with Python, we need the Python extension. And it's this one here by Microsoft. So you click on this. For me, it says uninstall because I already have it installed. For you, it should just say install. So click on that. Once it's done installing, it automatically loads for you. And that's about it. That's like really the only thing you need from VS Code. Anything extra is just extra, personal preference, right? So all these other Python extensions you see, you're more than welcome to explore them. They're free, easy to install, easy to uninstall. You get the point. But the one that you need is just Python from Microsoft. Peter, oh my gosh. Peter, I love you too. Yes, yes, Fletcher Quest also. Let me do this. Let me do this. Let me do this real quick. Because I should be able to just do it midstream, right? Hold on, let's do it right now. Let's do it right now. Because I want to feel cool. Give me a sec. I'm just changing the topic of the stream. And one little thing. Hold on. Oh my gosh, it's as if it was meant just for me. Done. Okay, there we go. Again, thank you everyone who gave me the clue, because I was not aware. Peter, you're the MVP as well. Wait, there can't be two MVPs. In my heart, there's room for two MVPs. So there you go. But thank you. Thank you very much. All righty then. We also try to keep it free from kids just playing Fortnite. Yeah, I feel that on a whole other level. You have no idea. Well, thank you. Now I'll use this one from now on. I was so sad when there wasn't one for like software, like engineering or programming or something. I was like, fine, I guess science and technology, but... All right, so yes, the extension for Python. So again, the things that you really need is you need to install Python, right? Python.org/downloads, install Python. If you're working with VS Code, install VS Code. And then once you have VS Code open, install the Python extension. And you really only have to do that one time. So it's not like every time you start a new project, you have to reinstall everything, right? No. Install those things one time, and then from then on, you're now a Python programmer. Look at you go. And that's about it. So yes. Yes, yes, yes. For fighting this for 7 months, you know what? Go Pirate Software. Go Pirate Software. Shout out to them. Go Pirate Software. Because yes, it was sad every time I had to use something like science and technology. I was even doing things like IRL, by the way. Oh, you're good. Peter, you're good, man. You are good. Oof, bias there. Assuming you're a man. Please interrupt. I don't mind. The suspense, I know, right? Well, thank you, Peter. Appreciate the cheer. Thank you for the bit, my friend. Thank you. I feel the love from Peter. Thank you, Peter. By the way, I currently have the music going. I just realized that. I had it for the starting when I was like getting things started. And it's still on. So let me know if you want to keep it on or if you want me to turn it off. Slowly sip. Thanks, Peter. I will have so much fun. In fact, I'll have too much fun doing this. Thank you, thank you. All right. So we were at, you installed the Python extension, you got VS Code going, you installed Python, the language itself. Yes. Now we want to actually add things, right? So all of this is, the rest of what I'm about to show you is kind of personal preference, because we in order to do the question that someone had, right? The first one was, how do I automate a dynamic web page? Well, in order to do that, we're going to need to install a library or add a library that lets us automate things on the web, right? Now, I myself, shameless plug, have created a tool called Pylenium, which is just a Python wrapper on top of Selenium, that I'm going to use because A, I made it, and B, it just makes it way easier to do stuff. So I'll be using Pylenium. So let me show you how you add that good stuff. Right now, we don't have anything installed called Pylenium. We have to add it to our code base. Now, you can think of, I called it a package or a library. You can think of these packages as kind of like an extension, where all of these extensions that you see, someone built, right? Either a single person built it or a team of people built it, and they share it with the rest of the world, right? They say, I'm going to build this thing to make, either it's a theme because I want things to look pretty, or I want to make it so that it's easier to work with my stuff, or whatever, right? And so you install this, you install the extension, and now you have it in your VS Code application, right? Think of that as the same exact thing. Pylenium is just like an extension that you're adding to your Python project, right? So here, poetry, add, and it's called Pylenium IO. And all this is going to do is poetry is going to add the Pylenium IO package to our project, right? So let's press enter. There it is. We get a cool few things that happen. If you have no idea what a virtual environment is, don't worry about it. If you do know what it is, notice how poetry just automatically creates it and is now managing it in the background, right? Again, if you don't know what they are, the good thing about poetry is that you don't really need to worry about what it is. But I would still recommend, if you're serious about Python programming, it's probably a good idea to learn about what is a virtual environment. So maybe note that down and do a little bit of research on the side. So here you can see that in order to install Pylenium IO, it had to install a bunch of other stuff. Right, look at all these things, right? And stuff like this that I don't know what it is, by the way. But it installs a bunch of stuff that is required to use Pylenium IO. And Vern, Pylenium is pretty dope. Vern gets it. Yes, it is. Super dopes. Super duper dopes. All right. Once we have Pylenium installed, here in our pipeproject.toml file, it got added here on line 9. Woo! There it is on line 9. Right, so our project is now like, oh yeah, you added Pylenium. I'm ready to use it. Cool. Not too shabby, not too shabby. Next up, we need to initialize Pylenium. So poetry, run, and then Pylenium init. Press that, or run it, and it creates a few files at our project root. So if I open up our file explorer here, yep, sure enough, look at all the green stuff. All these green files means that these are added. These were added files. So we added the pipeproject.toml, right, when we initialized poetry. And now we have a pytest.ini, a pylenium.json file, and a conftest file as well. These things are required for Pylenium to work. To give you an example of kind of the stuff that's in here, let me close this a little bit. Inside of pylenium.json, this is a config file that you can use to configure Pylenium. So for example, the default browser itself is Chrome, but if you wanted to target Firefox, then you would just change this to say Firefox, right? And if you want to do Safari, you can do that too. So yeah, like Firefox, save the file, and now it's using Firefox. See? So things like that. It's pretty straightforward, hopefully. Hopefully straightforward. And there's a bunch of other things that you can configure as well. So yeah, pretty nifty, pretty nifty. For those that may not know, ¿por qué do we need to initialize it? Good question, Vern, good question. Are you asking for a friend or are you asking for yourself? Just kidding. We need to initialize Pylenium just so that we can get these 3 files, right? We need this conf test file, we need this Pylenium config file, and we need pytest ini. So it just adds these 3 files for you, so then you don't have to write them yourself, right? So that's the biggest reason. It just adds these 3 files. It doesn't really do anything else besides that. Okay, right on, right on. Now you would think we're almost done. We're super duper close. We're almost done. But we need to tell VS Code which version of Python we're using, right? Unfortunately, VS Code has to be told. And that's because you can have many versions, right? You might have like 3 different versions of Python on your machine. And so you just gotta spend a little bit of time and just say, use this one, right? And that's about it. So the way we do this is by opening the command palette. Again, if you can just go to view here. This is probably the easy manual way of doing things. Click command palette and it opens this thing up. And now you can type in and find stuff. There's also shortcuts if you want to feel all programmery. You can do that too. But in this case, the one I'm looking for is Python select interpreter. I want to select a specific version of Python to use for this. So let me click on that. And it did a terrible job of finding the one I wanted. But here it is. This Python stream, and there's all those crazy characters and everything, right? So right here is the one that I just barely created with poetry. And notice how it's the same name as my project, Python stream, Python stream. So this is the one I'm looking for, which is version 3.9.1. So I'm going to click on that one. And then in the bottom left corner of the screen, hopefully you can see this. I don't know if it got cut off or not, but you should be able to see that this thing changed. At the very bottom, kind of trying to hover it. So right here it changed from saying select something, I don't know what you want me to use, to now it's saying, okay, I know which interpreter you want me to use, and it's selected that for us. Perfect. All right, almost there. Almost there. The last thing that we really need to set up is just a tests folder. If you're doing a automation, like a test automation project, this is pretty important. If you're not, you should still be writing tests as a developer anyway. So yeah, here at the project root, you can kind of click anywhere inside of this. Notice how it got like highlighted in this light blue, right? If I click here, not highlighted. Click here, is highlighted. Right click on this, make a new folder, and I'm just gonna call it tests. And Vern says it's a little bit cut off. Feels bad, man. Feels bad, man. Vern asks, AKA should be writing tests as a dev anyway. Yes, you should always be testing, no matter what role you're in. Testing is just a good idea. It's just a good idea, folks. I don't know why you wouldn't want to, you know what I mean? Let me see if I can... There we go. I think you should be able to see it now, right, Vern? Pow! There it is. All right. It's just a good idea to do testing. So I always, no matter what kind of project I'm working on, I always set up testing in some way, right? Always set it up no matter what. So we made a tests folder. We're gonna make a new file in here. This is required for Python. So I'm gonna start by creating a file called a dunder init.py. Now in Python we say dunder for double underscore. So it's like quite literally, let me press enter, there we go. It's 2 underscores, so underscore, 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 right? So dunder, double underscore, 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 init, underscore, underscore, dot py. Now, like I said, this is required for Python and VS Code. If you're using something like PyCharm, which is another VS Code-like application, you don't need that. But in VS Code you do. It just tells VS Code this is a test folder, and it should be able to run other packages that exist outside of it. We'll get into that a little bit later. But for now, just know that we need the init.py. Okay. With that said, let's open the command palette again, either with view, command palette, or I'm just going to use my little shortcut here. And we need to configure tests. So we need to say we have a tests folder now. We need to use it. We want to write some automated tests in this project. So configure tests. It's going to ask which one do you want to use. Do you want to use the standard unit test, or do you want to use PyTest? Pylenium comes with PyTest already installed out of the box. So I'm going to click PyTest. And then it asks which directory has your tests in it. I'm going to put them all in tests. So click tests. And there you go. We get this auto-generated VS Code folder with some stuff that may not be too helpful right now. But it just creates it so that way VS Code is kind of managing this project for us. Alrighty then. Whew. Nice, right? Alrighty then. The last thing before I start writing tests is I would recommend installing a linter and a formatter. So a formatter is going to help format your Python code to make it all pretty, follow a nice standard, and so that way if another Python developer is reviewing your code, they're not going to go, "What are you doing? Like this is not Pythonic. You're not a Python programmer." Instead of having to worry about formatting every little line, make sure that there's perfectly 4 spaces, things like that, you can just install a formatter and have it auto format things for you, so you don't have to worry about it, right? And so it makes your job as a programmer again easier. So the one that I like to use, and I pushed the wrong thing, the one that I like to use is called Black. No, I didn't come up with a name. But Black is a formatter in Python that does a lot of that formatting for you. So add dev and then Black. Now, why the --dev, Carlos? Fantastic question. Let me tell you why. Because this is something that I'm only going to use locally, right? As I'm developing the project, I want to use Black. But when I share this with other people, I'm okay if they use another formatter. I don't really want to package this with the rest of my stuff. Black will have no effect on the functionality of my code. It's just meant for me as I'm developing locally. And so you add this little flag here, poetry add, but add it as a development package, not something that's going to be built with everything else. So poetry add Black. There you go. Notice how it gets added to a different section. Right here's the main dependency, but here's a dev dependency. Right on. The last one I want to add is a package called Flake8. Dadgum, what a good question. I know, right? Wow, who's setting me up with these awesome questions? Goodness. Just keep it up. Keep it up. Yes. So, the next one I want to add is called Flake8. Now, this is called a linter, and linters is a form of static code analysis. You can think of it as it's this little check system that will check your code to make sure that things make sense, that your syntax is correct, you're following good rules and standards in Python, things like that, right? So it's kind of like a formatter, but instead of just formatting the code to look nice, it actually checks things too. So we might actually run into some situations where the linter is going to catch something and say, wait a second, this doesn't look right, which is pretty cool. Now, I'm going to pause the music. Sorry if you love it. I was going to pause it because some of that music is like, squam, squam, and I don't want it to be that, that aggressive. I don't want to compete with the music. So, well, it looks like it's still trying anyway. Shoot. Alright, I think I paused it. I hear nothing. And Chameleon1, hey Carlos, hello! Welcome to the stream. Whoever asked the question of how do you set up Python, I hope you're on here. Otherwise, I'm just showing to random people how to set it up, and hopefully it's helpful. Alright, so let's get Flake8 installed. So poetry add Flake8. Oh, dev Flake8. There we go. Press enter. Adds it all the same. There you go. And yeah. So hopefully now you're seeing the pattern for if you want to add these kinds of packages to your Python project, it's poetry add whatever you want to add and it gets included in there. So it's pretty cool. Nice and easy. And with that, I believe, hopefully, we have shown that that's how you get things set up. That's how you do the Python project setup in VS Code. So that DLIP, there you go. If you have any other questions about other specifics or whatnot, please let me know. Otherwise, I think that's a nice general overview for how you do it. So yes. We are not sad about seeing how a wizard sets up the Python project. Well, I appreciate it, Vern. I appreciate it. So next up, we have how do I automate a dynamic web page? Now, this person who asked this did send me an example because I said, hey, could you provide an example of a kind of scenario you're talking about so that way I can try? And they did, but they did it on the Slackarooskies. So let me find it real quick. Let me find it on Slack. Ba-boom. And let me swing it on over here. Hopefully you can see this okay. But here we go. So go to this and all of this and yes. So this is what we're going to try. Visit HeyGo, click on Tour from Starting Soon course. Here's the issue, or carousel, sorry. Here's the issue. If you click on a tour starting less than 15 minutes, when you go to the tour page, there will be no book tour button. If you click on a tour starting in over 15 minutes, then you'll have a book tour button. So if all tours are starting in less than 15 minutes, then we can't test the other 15-minute scenario and vice versa. Challenge accepted. Challenge accepted. So let's see what it would take to do that. So I'm going to go inside my test folder. Let's add a new file. And let's call this one test heygo.py. And we're going to put all of our code for this thing inside of here. Now, I'm using Pylenium again, right, which is just a wrapper of Selenium, but it's gonna look and feel kind of like Cypress, and that it's on purpose. Right, I did that on purpose, but yes. So in order to start working with Pylenium, we need to import the package in our Python file. So I'm going to say from Pylenium import Pylenium. Pylenium. Nice try. Nice try. There we go. Now we can start doing stuff with Pylenium. And so here I'm going to paste what they provided. That way I don't have to go back and forth to Slack and everything. I'll just put their stuff in here. There we go. And again, we have step 1, step 2, and then some little like gotchas. Gotcha number 1 and gotcha number 2. Right on. Okay. So let's go through those steps. Visit HeyGo, click on tour, and yeah. So right here, heygo.com. This better be a good website, or else you're making me look like a fool. Heygo.com. Look at all them slap groups, I know, right? Can't not think of Barney off of How I Met Your Mother when I hear challenge accepted. You know, I actually haven't seen that show. I haven't seen How I Met Your Mother. I've seen like clips of it on like TikTok and Instagram Reels and stuff, but I've never seen the show. So here's HeyGo, and they said click on tour from Starting Soon carousel. Click on tour from starting. Okay, click on any tour, I'm assuming. So you click on a tour. All right. If you click on a tour starting less than 15 minutes, then you go to the tour page where there will be no book tour button. Sure. There will be no book tour button. Okay. If you click on a tour starting in over 15 minutes, then you will have a book tour button. And, okay. So there's probably, let's click back. Which one of these starts? So live today at 11. Here we go. This one's after. Oh. Okay, let me try that again. Click, and there's a book button. Okay. Okay. So one of the first things would be, I know this person works there, right? So if you wanted to have your tests be very deterministic, you would want to control this input data, right? If you want there to always be a tour that starts in under 15 minutes, then just create an object, create a tour that starts in under 15 minutes, and then you can click on that, right? If this is something you have to test via the UI, I guess that's really your only route. So I guess my first question would be, does this have to be at the UI layer? Does it have to be with Selenium? If this is with React, because I know they're building it in React, can they not just test it in React? So there's a few questions I would have first, but I'm going to assume this person knows all of these things already, and they have determined with their team that automating it with something like a Selenium or Pylenium is the right approach. So I don't work there, so I'm just going to trust this person. So let's say there is no way for them to control the test data. There's no way for them to just create a tour that starts in 12 minutes. There's no way for them to create a tour that starts after 15 minutes. That would be a test data problem, a test management problem that I think they should solve, because that makes all of this problem go away if you just are able to manage your data. But again, let's say we can't and we are forced to do this right now. How would we do so? So let's get our test started so we can actually land here. We're going to call this one test tour under 15 minutes. Okay, and so inversely we'll have one test tour over 15 minutes, right? That makes sense. Alrighty then. In order to start working with Pylenium, we just need to tell the test that we want to use Pylenium. And we actually have a built-in fixture to do this called Py. And I'm going to say this is of type Pylenium. We'll do the same thing in this test as well. Pylenium. Looks like witchcraft, like what? All of a sudden Py exists and you can do stuff. Yes, you can actually. So check it out. I can say Py dot visit. And what do I want to visit? Well, I want to visit this thing. And I just realized that this is from Pylenium.driver. My bad. Pylenium.driver. Alrighty then, here we go. So py.visit this website, heygo.com. Right, I'm probably going to want to do the same thing here. So py.visit heygo.com. Aw, I just realized I'm out. Water bottle to save the day. Vern says it was one of my all-time favorite shows, minus the last season, and especially the ending. I'm still mad. Uh-oh. Is it as bad as Game of Thrones? Because that one, the last season, really made me upset, and I still feel bad about it. And Camille says, I love how intuitive it is. Yes, Pylenium is fantastic. I'm sure the author of Pylenium is also a very handsome fellow, whoever they are. So yeah. So py.visit this, right? If you're familiar with Cypress, by the way, you have like sci.visit. Like I said, I built Pylenium. I liked the experience that Cypress had, but I like automating in Python. And so I was like, how could I do this? So I put both of them together. That's why it has a very Cypressy feel, just so you know. Now, it's just heygo.com, right? So we land here, and then we got to click on one of them, right? But we need to find one that starts under 15 minutes. Now, this is going to feel really bad because we're going to have to do some, like, transformations and things. So, yeah. But we're going to go through it anyway, because I think that's going to make this a pretty interesting challenge. Pylenium is built in a really intuitive and simple way. We also wonder if I wonder if he wears glasses too. Yeah. I wonder if he likes telling people to be nice. So let's click on the first one of these, and either it will be something that's under 15 minutes or it will be something that's over 15 minutes. As a tester, immediately my first question that comes to mind is, what if it is exactly 15 minutes? Is there supposed to be a button or not? So I would get that question, I'd note it down and be like, team, here's what I think it should be. If it's 15 minutes, it shouldn't have one. And they might say, oh, actually, it needs to be 14 minutes or less, and you don't have a, whatever it is, right? I would immediately question my assumption there and write that question down to ask my team. All right, so let's inspect this. For anyone who's not familiar with web automation, by the way, I'm not gonna cover all of the stuff that I'm about to do, unless, of course, you ask the question. If there's no question, I'm just gonna go on, assuming that you know what's happening. So let's go through. So here you go. We have the image alt with this information in it. I'm curious if we can see that the start in 7 minutes thing, or if that's part of the image itself. Nope, here it is. If it's part of the image, I'm like, there's no way, right? So here we go. So here it is, starts in 7 minutes. Does everything say starts in? Is that just like a thing they say? Starts in 7 minutes? Oh, let me throw it over here actually. It's probably better to, because all my stuff's on the right hand side, so let me throw it this way. There we go. Now it's easier to see. So over here, you have this starts in 7 minutes. Notice how as I hover things in the HTML here, like you see things kind of change and highlight over here on the right hand side. So there it is. And what we really care about is this A element, because this is the thing that we got to eventually click on. But we also need to know when it starts, because this is the thing that's determining whether or not it will have a book button or not. Interesting. And Nor, if you are here, if you could let me know, because I don't know. Right now the pattern I'm seeing is that it will always say starts in X amount of time, minutes. Right, that's what I'm seeing right now, right? It starts in X minutes. So if that's the pattern, that's the thing I'm going to hook onto to determine whether this thing should have a book or should not have a book button. All right. The next thing is, once we've kind of determined the pattern and stuff like that, that we want to hold on to, now we got to find these elements so that way we can have or program a machine to find these things and click on them and do stuff like that, right? Vern says, I'm assuming that class is dynamic, eh? Yeah, like this one, we could probably use this like chip style chip. Let's find out. Let me know if you can't see this, by the way. Can I zoom in? Let me go like this. There we go. It's probably as big as I can go without it getting like really difficult for me to read. So yes. So we have this div thing that starts in 7 minutes, and we're going to try to go off this class, right? Everything after styled chip looks super dynamic, right? SC1RVA. This is probably going to be different for every one of these cards, and when you refresh the page, it's probably going to be super different as well, right? So I'm going to try to use this chip styles _ style chip. So here we go. The $, by the way, means use a CSS selector and find all of the elements that match this. So in the end, this should return a list of elements that it finds. Okay, so the first thing we start off is the element we want. The element is a div. That's this thing right here, right? So div. Notice how the dark blue, this dark blue is the tag name of the element. The one I want is div, so there's div. And then in square brackets, I'm going to put the attribute that I want to use to filter things, right? So in this case, anything that's a light blue is the name of the attribute. Anything that's orange is the value of the attribute, right? So, okay, so we're going to say I want to do the class, but I want it to contain, star equals this, the class that contains chip styles. Style chip. Let's see what we get back. There's 95 of them, by the way. There's a lot of them. So press enter. Like I said, there's 95 of these things. There's a whole bunch. And if we open this up, we look at the first one. The first one is up here. It says live. I don't know if you can see that. Right? So the first one is live. So the second one is that 4.8 stars. The third one is live. Then it's going to jump down here to starts in 7 minutes, and then 4.8. Right? We're starting to see a pattern here, right? And Camille asks, so you'll get starts in, or today at 00, or tomorrow, or something like that. Okay. So the nice thing about that is, if we say look for the thing that has starts in, it's going to ignore today, and it's going to ignore tomorrow. So we'll only get the things that say starts in. All right, moving on. So there's that. That's somewhat helpful, right? Somewhat helpful, but there's 95 of them. And all I really want is to find the starting soon one, right? because in what they said is they only care about what's inside of the starting soon carousel. They don't care about the jump right in. Right, but I don't know if jump right in, it's always live. Because it says jump right in, so I'm assuming anything in jump right in is always live. And starting soon is going to have the start whatever. So I don't really think we have to filter jump right in out. Because if we just look for starts in, I think it's going to be okay for us. Jump right in will always be live. Okay, so yes, my assumption was correct. Alrighty then. So, with that knowledge, thank you. With that knowledge, I'm instead of using the class name here, not helpful, right? There's 95 elements on the page that matched this thing. And so the class, it's not so great. So we just want to find the first card that says starts in. So instead of using CSS, I'm going to use Xpath because with Xpath, you can find things by text. So in here, that's a $X instead of $$. And let's try using Xpath. So I'm going to start with my // This means all elements. And look at that, there's 2,200 elements on the page. So obviously we want to be a little more specific. So let's be a little more specific. Let's say that it needs to have the text that equals, so hard equal, starts in 7 minutes. Oh, snappity snap snap. There's only one in here that says that. So let's find it. Boom, look at that. There it is. Now, wait a second, Carlos, that's not dynamic because that will only find elements that say it starts in 7 minutes. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Ooh, what you use something besides CSS? How dare you? Just kidding. Goes to show, use the best one. Yeah, with CSS, you can't find things by text. And in this case, we really care about the text of an element, right? So Xpath seems like a great alternative here. So yes, the text equal starts in 7 minutes. But that will only ever find elements that have starts in 7 minutes. Look, it just disappeared, right? So now we have one that says like starts in 30 minutes. So let me try again, and now look, it's gone, right? Starts in 7 minutes is not there anymore. So this is something that for Camille, you will need to figure out, my recommendation would be figure out how you can manage your test data. That is going to be the long-term, most robust solution, right? So I do want to be clear as we're kind of hacking this, that would be the way to go. How can you make it so then as your test starts, it already has a tour that is something you're looking for, right? That will make that so much easier. But let's continue hacking. So now it changed to 29 minutes, and this is just going to keep going down, right? So what if we got the thing, a element that just said it contains starts in, because that should get this first one, right? Let's change it a bit. So all right, let's try it here. Let's say, whoops, we want the thing that contains the text starts in. Keep saying stars. It starts. What am I messing up here? It says starts in, right? It does. Starts in, contains the text, starts in the stuff. It shouldn't be dot, it should just be text. Starts in, let's get rid of this. How many are there? How many are you, friend? The text that contains starts in contains the text of starts in, or is it contain? Nope, it's contains. All right, hold on. Let's go to my little cheat sheet here. Well, it's not mine. It's not my cheat sheet. It was the dev hints Xpath. What are you again? Shows you how much UI automation I do, y'all. All right, let's do contains. A contains. That's what I did. Text and then the thing. I must have. What did I mess up? Does anyone see it? Does anyone see it? Does anyone see it? Starts in. I feel like it might be like a little contains the stuff. Starts in. Let's find the element again. Starts in. Oh, it's in two separate things. Oh, snappity snap. It's in two things. F. Well, that's not good. Hold on. That contains the text in. There's none. No, that's not right. Crappity crap. It's in two separate things. It's in two separate things. I think we need to normalize the text. Hold on. Let's go here. Let's search normalize. Normalize. Normalize space. Contains normalize space the thing. All right. Let's go right here. Normalize space. And inside of this, we put our text. It's gonna be something like that, right? Something like a day. Gonna be a something like a day. Normalize space. Shouldn't have to say at. Let me bring this up a little bit more. It's at the very, very bottom of my screen, sorry, y'all. Contains normalize space text in F. I guess we could do starts too. That's probably better, but normalize space. If I just do starts, I don't think I need the normalize space anymore. Don't think I need that anymore. But yeah, so notice how when it's in two separate things, it's technically two separate text things. So that's why we couldn't say starts in, but feels bad, man. So this works, but well, all right. I wonder if there's a way to like combine that. I thought the normalize space would do it, but it didn't. Tears. But okay, we'll start with starts. We'll start with starts. That makes sense. It looks right to me. Two things. Yeah, so it's two separate text objects. So we'll do it like this because it looks like it's finding it anyway. There's 5 elements on the page that is a div that contains the text starts, which would be these things. So at least we found it. But interesting. Interesting. Anyway. Okay. So we can use this to find the first card, if you will, that has a starts in, and we can grab the text out of it. Now, I'm curious if we were to grab the whole thing, the whole card, and grab the text from it, could we just say .text and grab this as well? Now, that would be another option that we have too. So I'm looking at multiple ways of finding the pattern here, and I'm going to choose the one that I think fits best for what we're trying to do. Since we are just hacking away like a bunch of mad people. So the whole div we have right here, even though it's a sibling of it, it looks like starts in is there, but it might be on top of it. So here's this style card. So what if we were to say, let's get the div with the class card styles styled card. We'll do at class again, or contains, this time at class, and we're going to say we want the class to have styled card. There's 59 of them. So that's all the cards that exist on the page. With some coding kung fu, we could grab this and say if the element says starts in, we could grab that too. So a few different ways to go about it. But right now I'm liking our previous one that we had. Even though this works, I like this one a little more just because it's getting specifically what's in starting soon, and that looks to be a little bit better. But what do y'all think? Right? Because there's a few different ways we can go about this. Interesting behavior, says Vern. Makes me ask why they made those things separate. Yeah, I'm not sure. It might be something that React is doing. It might be something that they did intentionally. I don't know. But I mean, it is making it so then we can't just grab this element. Because I'm curious, if we grab the first one and then say inner text, yeah. See, so if I grab it, it puts everything together. and now it says starts in 23 minutes. So we can use this, still grab the inner text, and still have the whole string that we want. And then we can do something with this 23, right? Interesting, interesting. Okay. So let's grab this. Let's go into code, because I want to try this one out. Let's go into code and try it out. So right here, we're going to say pi.get and x, right? Because we're using Xpath. So pi.get Xpath, and then paste in the selector that I had here. Now this pi.getX, if I hover over it, it tells us some information. Right, we have to pass in an Xpath as a string, a timeout if you want to change the timeout, and it returns an element. This finds a DOM element that matches the Xpath selector. So even though in here the console we got 5 of them back, if we use getX in Pylenium, it will only return the first one it finds. If we wanted to find all of them, we would say find. Right, pi find X, that returns an array of elements that match that query. But I only care about the first one, right? So get X and this. So hopefully you're still with me there. You can do things on the element. So if I do dots, you'll see like you can get things within it. You can get its children. You can click it. You can deselect it, get a CSS value from it. You can drag it, highlight it, hover it. Lots of different stuff like that, right? So lots of things you can do. If I click on this, it probably won't work, but let's give it a try, right? Let's give it a try. So we have this first element. If I click on it, my assumption is that nothing's going to happen. Let's see. Tier. And I figured nothing was going to happen because it's a div, right? It's not an anchor element or an A element, which is like a link, right? That's not the thing that you click on. So like, see me clicking on it in the UI. Notice how I get the little like text thing, right? But if I go anywhere else on the card, it turns into the little hand like, oh, you can click on this, right? So me clicking on this label of starts in 20 minutes doesn't work. I have to click somewhere in the actual card itself, the clickable area of that. So that would be the next thing we have to figure out. But notice how we have these siblings, right? These are the siblings of it. And we can grab the siblings. So we can say, give me all of the siblings of this element. We only care about the first one, I think, because this actually has the A element in it. And then we can click on that. Right? So let's go over here and let's give it a try. So we don't want to click it. We don't want to click it. We want to get this thing siblings. I'm going to do like, what? Let's say this starts in element. Just so we hold it in a variable. And then let's get its sibling and click on the first one. So starts in element. We want to get its siblings. We want the first sibling. The first sibling. And then here within it, it has an element that's an A. And that's what we want to click on. Oh, look, and even Copilot's like, I think you want to do this now? Nice try, Copilot, but you're wrong. So I'll pause there for effect a little bit because I know that this part was very fluent and is like, what? I hope it makes sense what it's doing, but I'm going to walk through it in the HTML anyway. So starts in element dot siblings dot first dot get a dot click that. Sounds funky, I guess. Hopefully just you're reading and you're like, okay, yeah, I get it. If not though, we're getting this element. We're getting its siblings. Its siblings would be this one, and this one. So get all the siblings, but we only want the first one. Why? Because the first one is the actual like main card thing that we want to click on. Within this main card, we don't want to click on the div. We want to click on the A, the actual clickable thing, the link, right? And so we're saying within this, get A. Get the A and then dot click it. Right. So that's all we're doing right here. The starts in element, dot siblings, grab the first one, then within that, get the A element and click on that link. Okay. Dang, that's nice, right? I know, right? It's not too bad. It's not too bad, Vern. I like the first option you were doing, using contains. Yeah, I think it's probably the easier way. The other way would work as well. I mean, the other way we'd get the parent of all this. So the parent would be this element. And then within that, we have the entire card. So we would know the name of the tour. We would know how many stars it has. We would know who the person that's running the tour is, the location, when it starts. So we could also go for the parent, just the style card. And within that we could then get, what's it called? Within that, we could grab the label, the starts in 17 minutes. And we could also grab the 8 element. So that's another approach as well that we could go through. And I both of them seem like good solutions to me. Right, both seem really great. Yeah, so continuing on. This is the beautiful thing about programming, by the way, is like there's many ways to do the same thing. And so what you want is, there's times when you by yourself will have pretty good intuition for which one is the best one to do. But in this case, both of them seem like great options. And so if you're pairing or ensembling with other people, you can kind of design the one that feels best for you, right? And so that's why I like doing pairing. I like ensembling with other developers or other testers. That way, you know, I have other people that I'm talking to, and we can collaborate and build a really good solution that makes sense to both of us or all of us if we're ensembling. So it's usually a good idea to code with other people with you. But of course, sometimes you're unable to, like right now. Man, I got like the coughity coughs, goodness. So, and Nakili, I hope this is making sense. Please, 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 if there's anything that you want me to pause or explain, I totally will. Like I said, if no one asks any questions, I'm just going to keep going. Because, yeah, I mean, it hopefully makes sense. Hopefully. All right, so we click on the thing. This one starts in 16 minutes. And now we have this book thing, right? There's something called book. I don't know if it matters which book, by the way. I'm assuming that if you can't book it, there will be no book button anywhere on the screen. But I have no idea. So let's go find it. Let's just go find it. We have a button with the text of book. So let's just assert that book is not there. Pi should not find, what is it? Should not find a button, chakra button, I don't know. Thank you, it all makes sense thus far. Sweet. I'm gonna do this. It shouldn't contain anything that has the text of book. Right? Nothing in here should say book, hopefully. I don't know. I actually don't know. Book. Oh, it does. But not a capital book. Something like that, right? So right now we have an assertion. It looks like the test is done. But the problem is, if you haven't already seen it, the problem is that we have no control over the test data or the data that exists on the website. Right? We have no control over it. And so this test might pass sometimes and it might fail other times. Right? So let me run the test real quick. Because the first time you run a test with Selenium, it always takes a little bit. So let me just click and run it. Pylenium, by the way, will automatically install drivers and stuff. So you don't have to worry about that. I'm trying to grab it. We got there. That way you can see the test running. So there it goes. We get here. It's waiting for it to load. Notice the spinny thing up here. So it's waiting for it to load. Give it a second. Need some help? Yes. All right, and it blew up. Let's go check out why. It blew up because it says could not find element with CSS A. Could not find element with CSS A, and that probably means that this thing text starts. All right, so let's put a breakpoint right here. And let's do a debug. Oh no, I meant to, okay. Well, I forgot the new UI, you have to right click on this thing. Oops. With the new UI, you gotta actually right click. Holy moly, this website though. Give it a second. Vern says, I love not installing drivers and the stuff like that, right? Yeah, Pylenium will manage the drivers for you, so you don't have to install Chrome driver and add the path or anything like that. You just say, I want to use Chrome driver, and then it installs it and manages it for you. All right. So here we go. Py.getX and stuff. Oh yeah, I wanted to debug it. That was right. So let's right-click this and debug. If you just click it, it'll just run it. So right-click it, click debug, and now we can have it stop and stuff. Vern says, interesting choice. Why right-click? What do you think of having right-click now? I think it's fine because now they provide a lot of options where before you had run and debug and that was it. Now they give you like run is the default, and if you right-click it, you have now like a new context menu of stuff. So I'm okay with it, I think. Okay, so we're able to load it. We're now trying to find the element that contains start. So let's step over. Looks like it finds something, right? So at least one element was found. We have the stuff. So there's a starting element. And I don't know if we can actually open this up. Let me close a lot of these things. I don't care about that. We have the element. Hi. Whoops, I triggered something. Did not mean to trigger it. But anyway, so I want to see just some information about it. So right here we have the text of starts in 11 minutes. Right, so we did definitely find something, and here it is. Starts in 11 minutes is at the top of the screen right now. So we did find it. So it looks like that's working, but it didn't come into view. So I think we need to scroll to the element. So let's do that. I think that's our problem. I think that is our problem. Let's step over. Let's see what happens. And it gets sad. It got sad about things. Okay. First problem we need to solve is actually like scrolling the thing in a view. So let's do that. Let's do it. Scroll into view. That problem should go away. I wonder if the accept cookies things will cover it, but we'll find out. And then it's saying that it didn't find this. So, I wonder if it would be better to get the parent and then within the parent get a because this clearly isn't working. So if we just get the parent, which is the whole card, and then say within that grab the A element that you find, maybe that will be sufficient. So this time I'm not going to mess with the debugger because I think that threw it into view. That's kind of cheating. I didn't mean to do that. So let's debug right here. Let's try again, and let's see if our scroll into view will now bring the element into the viewport so we can interact with it and stuff. Oh yeah, it loves to just throw it over here. Let's see what happens. Man, this website. Got to work on some performance there, friends. Okay, so finished loading, and now we're here. So right now in the UI, this is where we're at. So our hope is that when we do scroll into view, it's going to bring the page up, and the element will be in the viewport. So let's give it a try. So here we go. Step over here. And now, yep, it brought it into view, and now we have it there right in the viewport. Starts at 9, so there you go. Let's see if this works. We had siblings.first before. Now we're going to say just grab the entire style card and get the A element within the card and click on that. So let's give that a try now. So again, here we are. Let's step over. And it freaked out. So let's run it. Let's get the error back and see what it says. See what it says. See what it says. There we go. Undefined. Element not interactable exception message. Element is not interactable. It has a 0 size. Oh. 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 So a few options here now. Whenever you see that, there's a few things we can do. Number one, we can force the click. Right? That would be something we could do. We can say, I don't care about the rules of the internet. I just want to click it. So you could do this. That would work. It would click on the A element anyway. But Selenium is like, if it has no size, like it's 0 by 0, technically you shouldn't be able to click on it. So even though we could force the click, let's find a better solution. Worst case, we can go to the force click though. So all right, so let's check what it said, because it actually said you can't do that. So let's go back a page. Let's go to our whatever it is right here. Starting soon. Starting soon. Let's click on this, inspect it. We have an A element, and sure enough, there you go. I don't know if you can see it, but it says, like right here, see how I hover it? It says A and it's 0 by 0. So it's correct. We shouldn't be able to interact with it. So that kind of tells me that we should just be able to click on this then though. So let me click on this. Notice how kind of on my mouse over here, it says equals $0. So what that means is that once you highlight an element in the HTML, you can actually just do the $0 here, and that is now like a reference to the highlighted element. So I don't have to go find it or anything. So $0.click. Can I just click this then? Will it work? Nope. Okay. Maybe we should just force the click then, because the A element is, I don't know if that's accessible actually. I don't know if that's actually a problem. That feels like a bad design. Hold on. Oh, I pressed tab and it didn't. Yeah, this is not very accessible. Where am I? Wait, where am I? I'm pressing tab and I have no idea where I am. Yeah, I don't think they're supposed to make the anchor element 0 by 0. And I'm pressing tab and I have no idea where I am. It didn't show me anything, so yeah, accessibility wise this is pretty poorly designed, unfortunately. So that's another thing I would bring up, by the way, and Camille, I would make sure that you bring up how accessible the site is, because I tried tabbing and the only thing I saw was Explore Tours, and from there I'm lost. I have no idea where my focus is now. So accessibility would be another thing I'd bring up, by the way. Yeah, Vern is saying, well, in this case, it's not the accept cookie thing, right? Because our element is at the very top of the screen. So I actually have a screenshot for it. With Pylenium, when a test fails, you automatically get a screenshot. So right here, hopefully you can see this okay. All right, let me zoom in to the freaking world. Holy cow. So right here, there's our element. So the accept cookies thing is down here, right? So it shouldn't be in our way. What we're working with is right here. Starts in 9 minutes. So yeah, we can't click on the A thing. It doesn't work. So once I saw the A is 0 by 0, I'm like, I think that actually breaks an accessibility like rule. I don't think you're supposed to do that. So, and that's why I tried tabbing, right? I'm like, I wonder what the accessibility experience is like. And once I started tabbing, I don't even know where my cursor went. So it feels bad, man. But that's where we're at. That's where we're at. We're just going to force the click then. Because there's other problems with the website, like accessibility, that I think needs to be figured out as well. So, all right. So let's put a breakpoint here this time. Right click and debug test. Let's see what happens. Meow. Accessibility matters, people, by the way. So make sure your designs and things are accessible. It's your responsibility as the development team to make sure things are accessible for people. Give it a sec. It's still loading. Still loading. Okay, there we go. So we should be scrolled into view. That we are. And now let's step over. We didn't break this time. We got there. So 33 minutes until the tour starts. And because it's above 15 minutes, we have the book button. I guess in this case, the test is going to fail because we're saying there should be no element that contains the word book. But there is one, so the test is going to fail because of that, but let's see it. And Camille, yeah, accessibility is defo a bit of an issue. Yeah, there's some bad things that they're doing. I couldn't even tab to where I wanted to go. So there we go. And it should say that there's something that contains book. This is an interesting new view that they give me, but look right here. Found element containing textbook. Yeah. Yep, it's right. It found something called book when I said it should not contain book. It found something that contained book. Okay, so I think we have the general idea down, right? I think we found the pattern that we're looking for. We're able to now find the thing, scroll it into view because we need to do that, and then click on that A element. And we have to force it just because we have to force because the A element is 0 by 0, right? So, which is no bueno. They shouldn't do this. But anyway, but that's the case right now. So as an automation engineer, right, I would raise the accessibility issue. I would raise, if I don't already know this, what happens if it is 15 minutes? If it is 15 minutes, what is it supposed to be? Right, so I didn't even write a test for this. Tour starts in 15 minutes. Right, and I'd want to find out what happens if I do this. Right, so if it's under, do this. If it's over, do this. If it's exactly 15 minutes, which one is it supposed to do? Right, so questions I'm writing down as I'm exploring, I'm finding problems. Accessibility was a big issue. Notes and things like that I'm taking as a tester, right, and making sure I'm raising to my team. So yeah. Okay, so the next step to this, exactly 15 minutes will show the book button. So that would be, so test tour is over or equals 15 minutes, right? We could either change the name of this. We could have 3 separate tests. The only problem with this test, right, is that we have to be able to manage the test data. So that way we could say make a tour that has 15 minutes, so then I can click that and test that behavior, right? So yeah. But now I know. See, this is why you ask. Because now I'm no longer assuming. I know that it is over or equals 15 minutes to do this. Has book button. And then if it's under, then doesn't have it, right? Tour under 15 minutes has no book button. Something like that. So even as I'm learning more, the tests are changing a little bit, right? So yeah, I mean, your tests are these living documents. They're literally like descriptions. They're describing these features and telling me what I expect given this state or this input, right? So I actually realized it when you were on the tour earlier. Oh, there you go. And I wasn't paying attention. Okay, so like I said, we have the general idea down, but now we have to dynamically be able, again, we don't have control over the data. That would be the best solution here, but we don't, so we're hacking our way through. We need to find a way to grab the minutes from this starts in element, grab the minutes based off the text inside of it, check whether it has a book or it does not have a book, right? This is very non-deterministic, so that's why it feels so bad. But alas, we're hacking our way through this stuff. Okay, so we have this starts in already, so it feels good. We need to grab the minutes though, right? So if we get the starts in text, that would just be the starts in element.text, right? So if I wanted to grab the text out of it, that'd be this. And as an example, this would be like, yeah, exactly right. Thank you, Copilot. It looks something like that, right? Starts in 15 minutes. And then from there, we need to determine whether it is 15 and greater or 14 and less. And then based off of that, determine. So we have this already. This is the pattern. The pattern is starts in X minutes. So again, lots of different options we can go about in order to extract the 15 out of there. But we need to turn it into a number so we can do that comparison, right? So we can say like minutes is equal to, yeah, I mean, yep, that's exactly what I was thinking about. So thank you, Copilot. So let me break it down though, because I know Copilot just suggested this. But when we do this split, the split's going to grab this text and is going to turn it into a list. So now it's going to be starts in 15. Do you see that? It's going to look like that, right? Yep. It's going to look like that. We want to grab not the first one, because the first one would just be starts. We want to grab the third one, right? I want to ignore starts, ignore in. I want this one. This is the actual thing I care about. And so that would be in the, that's the third item. And since with programming, when you're doing indexing, most of the time you start at 0. That would be 0 is starts, 1 is in, 2 is 15. So right here. So grab that. And then right here, wrap that inside of int. So we're going to turn the 15 from a string of 15 into an integer of 15, and that's our number of minutes. And again, this is just one way of doing it. I'm sure there are many ways that we can go about this, but this would be one, right? It's following this pattern of starts in X minutes. So we can take advantage of that. Follow the pattern. Pausing for effect and moving on. So now, Copilot is close. Copilot is close. Copilot is close. Once we have the minutes, we then click and get to this page. Right? We click, we get to this page. And now we got to do that. What are we asserting? We're either asserting it should contain book or asserting it should not have contained book. Right? So if the minutes is less than 15, then assert, I already wrote this. Hold on. I already wrote this. Yes, then that. Else, it's going to be 15 or greater, and so it should contain book. It should contain book. And let me move this up, actually. Let me move it up just a little bit. So, and chameleon, that right there would essentially be your solution. It is a solution. Again, in my opinion, it is a low quality solution because you should try to avoid things like if else's or try catches in your test, because that's immediately a code smell. It's telling you that you don't have control over your data. You don't have control over the application. And so you have to do these conditions and whatnot. And so you have a very non-deterministic test, right? If I run, and what I mean by non-deterministic is every time I run the test, I'm going to get a different input and a different output. So if the test fails one time, I might be able to run it again and have it pass. It's not the best way to go about things, right? And that's why I'm having such a hard time. Even though we solved it, it just doesn't feel great, because of that. So, but it does solve the problem that you were looking for. And if we are to have this test be like this, and this was the finished product, we would have to change the name of our test, right? Test tour has button if under 15 minutes, or has button if 15 or over. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. Now we have these like non-deterministic tests that we're dealing with, and just doesn't make me feel good inside. I just don't feel great about it. But there you go. There you go. Any questions, anyone? Like, hopefully that shows you the power of Pylenium, right? Like, look, we had all the logic here inside of the test. This is easily something we could refactor out, right? We could refactor this and turn it into more reusable functions, because I'm sure we're going to have tests that want to try other cards out, right? So we could make it so then we grab all of these starts in and say, find me one that has starts in that is 15 or higher, and grab me that one. But again, we're hacking a solution just because we don't control our data. So So, yeah. Ignacio says, nice, I just finished a Python course over the weekend to make it a little bit easier for me to follow the stream. Totally worth it. I'm glad. Hopefully you look at it and you're like, okay, like hopefully it doesn't look too bad, right? And if you watch over the stream again, I show you everything you need to start a web automation project from scratch. Installing Python, setting up the project in VS Code, installing Pylenium IO, writing the test. I mean, and the test is just this, right? We don't need this because this was for me. But this is the whole file so far. And you can even exclude the comments if you wanted to. This was just for everyone on stream. So I don't need that. I'd leave this one here just because that's why I'm forcing, right? That's why I'm forcing the click and ignoring Selenium's check whether it's valid or not. But. And community says, what do you recommend as long-term solutions? Seeding data, QA-specific environment? No, great question, wonderful question. So the first thing was the QA-specific environment doesn't solve your problem, right? Because that means that your test would only work in that QA environment. And that does not make it very portable. You want your test to be able to essentially test any environment that you target, right? So kind of like here in pylenium.json, let's say you have an object here called like custom. You have custom, and then you want like your base URL, and let's just say this is, I don't know, https dev.heygo.com, right? Let's say something like that. And so you're like, well, in order to manage our data, we have to have a QA-specific environment. So then you change this to QA, right? So qa.heygo.com. And as long as this is the base URL, your tests are reliable, they work. But once someone does something in like a staging environment, this would then be changed to like stage.heygo.com. But now you don't control the data inside of staging. And so all of your tests start to fail. Right? And so that's what I mean by your test should be portable. They should be able to work on any environment that you target. Right? So it's not really about the separate environment. You just need to manage the data better. You need to be able to create objects more easily. So you ask, what do you recommend as long-term solutions? Seeding data, that's an option. Right? They probably have something like an API that actually generates these. So I would be curious if I could actually test a lot of these things at the API layer, right? The test that we're doing right now, we're literally just clicking this card that says under 15 minutes or over 15 minutes, and then checking if an element exists. I think that doing something like Selenium or Pylenium is kind of overkill for this, just because you already work with the React code base, and this is something they could easily test with the React testing library. It'd be a lot faster, it'd be a lot more reliable, and again, portable to all the environments they have. So I would want to weigh the pros and cons of, do I just use React testing library and test this because it's very simplistic functionality you're looking for? I mean, you're literally clicking something and checking state. Or what are the benefits you get of using something heavier like a Pylenium that's rendering the entire browser just for you to do this, right? And weigh those pros and cons. But like I said, they probably have some API that is fetching these things, right? Because when you load the page, they're hitting an API that's grabbing all of the tours, and they're grabbing a section that says, what are the tours that are starting soon? And so you can grab those and do something with them. So if you can grab those, that probably means you can create tours too. So what's the API that creates a tour, and just leverage that. Before the test starts, create a tour that is 14 minutes. And now you can grab that tour and do stuff with it, right? Something like that. So there are different options again, right, that you have there, but I would want to set up or create like this fixture that we call them fixtures in PyTest, to set up the test, do something with it, and then tear it down, right? So maybe at the end of the test you delete that tour. Something like that, right? Yeah, we've tried stubbing the home page. However, once you get onto the tour page, the data changes. Let's check something out real quick. Let's check it out. So I'm running this right now. Let me clear everything, clear all the stuff. Let's refresh the page. A lot of things happen, right? Lots of stuff happens. Things are loading. This is probably why it takes forever. This is actually a really good, this would be a great candidate for GraphQL, by the way. So let's see here. Where is the stuff? Content integration. Man, it's so large. Let's close this maybe. All right. So something in here is going to be the one that we care about. If you see it, let me know. Public categories. I mean, this will be helpful at least. So here we go. Let me see if I can make this way bigger. So we have this arboretum. This is a public categories, tours public. So here's a bunch of tours, right? 15 or 16. The first one here is this. It's this arboretum. I don't know how to say that. But the most beautiful park in Slovenia. Right, so there you go. An average rating of 5. It has a bunch of information about it, including an ID. Right, so notice how in the network tab, I'm trying to see when I land on this page, what API requests are being sent out. Because now that I have this, like see how it says HTTPS API heygo.com tours, all of this stuff. I wonder if I just copy this. Let's copy. I just want the URL. Do it to me now. Give me the request URL. Give me the request URL. Let's open up Postman. I wonder if I can just hit this and get all this data back as well. And this is someone who doesn't work there, by the way. This might actually work. Hold on. Postman takes a little bit. The screen of death. The loading screen. Come on. I'm just seeing a wheel. Uh-huh. Okay, there we go. Hey, we got there. All right, let's make a new request. Close all these things. Close, close, close. Beautiful. And then paste. And get rid of this. And send. There you go. So look right here. I don't even work there and I'm able to hit your stuff. Yeah, Ignacio, well done, well done. I'm glad that you spent some time. Check out Python a little bit. It's a different language from, I don't know what you're learning in the university, by the way. So if you want to share that, what languages are you learning in the university? That'd be interesting to find out. I don't know what universities are teaching nowadays, but and Camille, hopefully you see that as someone who doesn't even work there, I'm able to hit some of your endpoints and even get information about the stuff, right? So if I kept exploring, I might be able to find out how you actually are grabbing this information and keep using that. But for you actually work there, right? And so you probably have the APIs to create tours and stuff like that, and even create those details pages. So just wanted to show you that even though I don't work there, like look how much information I can grab. So you have even more, right? You have even more than I do. Let's keep this open. I'm going to clear it again. And let's click on one of them. So you have this one that starts in 14 minutes. So let's click here and let's see what things happen once we get here. So there we go. Everything loaded. From the look of it, we had all of these things are like are tags and things, probably for them to monitor, like Google Analytics, for example, see how people are, what are they clicking on, marketing things, stuff like that. That's what all these other little things are. Segment, there you go, segment IO, which means that they're actually like funneling. They're creating funnels of users. So that's what segment does. There's a whole bunch of stuff they're doing. Tours public limit. I don't know what this one will do. Here's the Cusco part 2. API amplitude, Cusco part 2. So right here, I think this is the one. I think this is the one. So notice here, this is the request. I don't know if you can see that. I'm going to actually bring this in. Let's go to Postman and try it out. Because this is the request URL that got sent. So when I clicked on that link, it sent an API request that is this exact URL. Right, so let's try it out in Postman. And see what we get back. All right, make another one of these. And paste it in. And send. Oh, snap. All right, yeah, we got everything. Very cool, very cool. So, yeah, see how I can also hit the same thing, right? And this is me, as someone who doesn't work there, grabbing all this information. So let's take a look at this object here and see what information we have. We have the ID. So that's something that will be very good to know. The title, the description, the area, duration. I don't know what this duration means exactly. 50 minutes right there. So it's a 50-minute thing. Okay. Cover image. So here's a bunch of stuff about the image itself. Booking limit is 300. Booking limit is 300. So here's the slug for it. Created at. Tags. Status is active. This might matter for you, by the way. Is upcoming. Is in progress. Right? Like, so these values here are really, really interesting because this might tell you whether or not it starts in under 15 minutes. Right? What does is in progress mean? That I'm assuming that if it's in progress, it'll be live, right? If it is upcoming, does that mean that it's starting sometime today? Is that 15 minutes and higher? Stuff like that, right? Because it might be that if this is true, I wonder what happens. I wonder what happens if that's true. Status is active even. Then we get a bunch of reviews and stuff. First tour I've done with Mike around the market. Learned so much, yeah. So you get reviews even. I don't want to read all the reviews though. So let's minimize that. What else do we have? Location, ID, name. I don't care about the location though. The channel name, the channel slug, channel bio, channel avatar. Whew, I think you get the idea, right? Instances, yeah, I don't know exactly what that means, but there's a bunch of information on this, and they're probably using this information to determine whether or not it should show a book button or not. Like my hunch from just looking at this is they are probably using this data to determine whether to display a book button or not. The developers should know. They should know, and they should have something telling them if it's 14 minutes or less, don't show the book button. They have some logic in their code that says that. If it's 15 minutes or higher, do show the book button. So just grab this data and say, hey, how are we using this JSON object to determine whether we do the book or not?
Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
Oh, man.
Welcome back to Cusco. Priscilla, Christine, Ed, Ken, Ariana from London.
Uh-oh. No.
McDonough.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Thank you, Mike, for the, the welcome. Appreciate that. Yeah. So, again, hopefully... yeah, I was like, what the heck? So Ignacio, sorry, I was on my thing. Let's see. So far, C++ and Java in the main classes. There's an elective that teaches web dev, so they teach HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. There are also some machine learning and AI that use Python, but those are way at the end of the career. Totally, but I think that universities are moving out from C++ and starting to use Python. There are just too many bugs that can happen just because of pointers management in C++. Yeah, I mean, the nice thing about learning something like a C++ is that like you are really getting into the internals of the machine. So I could see how learning something like C++ is really valuable. But unless you're really doing things that require something like C++, that lower level like language, you might never use it. So I'm sure going through the university and learning about it is good. I think that's valuable no matter what. But it's cool that you have electives that you can kind of branch into and say, okay, now that I have this like really good foundation of stuff, something like Python is going to feel amazing because you're used to doing things in C++, and now you're going into a higher level language that does a lot of that management for you, and it's pretty cool, you know. But I think learning C++ is awesome. And then Java is just a solid language too. Good object-oriented language that is used in a lot of places. So that's a good one too. And Camelia, I hope that gives you some ideas for how you can go about managing that data. Right? Because that'll, I mean, it'll just make things easier for you if you know how to create, get, delete things on like in the database via the API. Well, that doesn't just help you with API testing, but it also helps you with automating a lot of the setup and teardown of your tests. Because then we could have two very deterministic tests. And let me close out of this. I didn't want to save this. We could have two very deterministic tests if at the beginning you had a fixture that managed all that, right? So if we had a fixture that was like, let's say, tour under 15 minutes. And we'll probably want to call it create tour. Right, and then you hit your API, API.post something. You hit that URL that we had, and then once you've created it, or it's a tour, not a post. So we're going to say tour is equal to that. Yield the tour, and then once you're done, API delete tour, or something like that, right? So again, this is just pseudocode, so ignore the errors. It's just pseudocode. But if you do something like that, now you have a function that will create a tour under 15 minutes. You can get the tour object back, which looks something like this, right? This is what a tour object looks like. And then determine, based off the data inside of here, it should have the book button or it should not. And now you have very dynamic tests, not very deterministic tests that you're not just like, you're not dependent on the UI, you're controlling that. So I hope that helps. Which most don't work in that low level. It's definitely interesting though. C++ is pretty cool. I've never learned C++. I just see what it can do, and if I had to learn a language like that, I'd probably do Rust. But yeah, once upon a time, before I actually started my dev journey, I took a programming class, and it was in C++. I still have the book. Nice. Very nice, very nice. Well, all right. There we go. There we go. Thanks, it's very helpful. You're welcome. I've not done that with API before. Are there any resources that would help, or are you able to cover it sometime? Yes. We actually did a lot of API stuff, and I do actually have a repo for it. So thank you, cheat sheet. By the way, if you're getting into web automation, this cheat sheet has been super helpful because sometimes I don't remember all the stuff. So it's a pretty good one. CSS and Xpathy things. So let me do, what was it? It was Python movie example. Excuse me. So this API was the one that we were just working on last week, and it was purely API based. So we were using Python and the requests library in order to do things with this movie database API. So you'll see things like in TMDB, let's say the discover, a simple example. So here you go. Here's how in Python you would hit their discover movies endpoint and return a list of movies. Like it's pretty straightforward, right? You need the request library. So you'd say poetry add requests. And once you have that, import requests, and then request.get, what's your URL with the endpoint? You have to pass in any headers, any parameters. You basically get what you're doing in Postman, and you just go from Postman and turn it into this. And then, yeah. So I would say take a look at that if you want like a real world example. Otherwise, there's gotta be, there's gotta be stuff. So I wonder if on Test Automation University, I wonder if they have a course for this actually. I know they will in JavaScript. So here's API test automation with Postman. Let's do API. What do they have? API testing in Python. Shoot, there you go. API testing in Python, API testing in JavaScript, contract test with Pact. Those are probably the ones you want to go with. None of these other ones really do it. Oh, here you go. Here's, if you're doing Java, here's API testing with Rest Assured if you're Java based. So yeah, I like how mine is in there. Mine has nothing to do with web APIs, but that's okay. Scaling does a Docker if you care about Docker, but nothing with APIs. So you're doing Cypress. So I would say do the JavaScript one. So API testing in JavaScript is the one you're going to use. Cypress is not very good for API testing. I wouldn't recommend it. So if you're doing API testing, just use JavaScript. And then you can do stuff with, like, you can use all the functions you're creating for JavaScript, you can use inside of your Cypress tests, right? Like in your Cypress tests, you can have I did a before each, or like I did this fixture, right? With like tour, create the tour, then return the tour to the test, and then after the test is done, delete the tour. You can do the exact same thing with Cypress, where you can have like a before each test, create a tour that does this, and then after each test, delete that tour, something like that, right? So you can achieve something very, very similar to what I'm explaining here in Python with JavaScript. So I would really recommend using this website. It's completely free, by the way, for anyone who's interested in doing software testing and test automation. This is a completely free resource for you, and you can see there's a whole bunch of stuff in here. So definitely take advantage if you're looking. And of course, if you have any questions, let me know, and I can dive into things a little bit more. I think I have one for TypeScript, by the way. So TypeScript, where are you? I did one for TypeScript. What did I call it? TypeScript. Come on now. Ugh. I don't remember what I called it. Hold on. Oy. Give me a search function. Yes. All right, here, TypeScript the movie DB. So this is the same thing that I did for the Python thing, but it's for TypeScript specifically. So this might help you more, just because it is TypeScript. But it's like, here's the discover.testts, and here you go. So here's the test for discovering movies. Let's go to the actual function though. Let's go to it. There you go. And this is how I did it in TypeScript. So instead of requests, I was using Axios, right? Use Axios, but same thing, axios.get. Here's the endpoint. Pass in any params or headers you need, and then return the response back, and now I can test that response and stuff like that. So there you go, there you go. Woo! There's so much goodness on TAU, yes! Test Automation University is a powerhouse of information, and again, it is free, so take advantage, people. Take advantage of stuff like this. Thank you, you're awesome, Anna and Camille. I appreciate it. Thank you for the awesome question, and I mean, quite literally, today's stream was dedicated to you, so great question. It's a tough one. It's a really, really tough one. And I hope that even though I provided a hacky solution to solve the problem, right? This does solve the problem. Let me delete all this. Hopefully I was able to describe the pros and cons of this approach, and maybe some ideas you have to take back to the team to make a more robust, a faster, more reliable suite of tests for you. Yeah, wasn't it called TypeScript movie thing? Yeah, we got there. We got there, eventually we got there. We got there. Yes, Gleeksorb, welcome. It is an early stream today, just because it's Labor Day here in the US, and I wanted to try to be done by noon if I could, because I want to hang out with my kids and stuff, right? They don't have school today, so I figured let me do the stream early, and then I'm a bounce, and I'm a party the rest of the day. So, okay. I'm going to send this stuff up, just so then you all have it as well. I like to submit these things, and then you can see it, everything that we're working on. I'll probably use this repo quite a bit. That's why I called it just Python Stream. So that way I could do like different challenges and things. If we go through tutorials, stuff like that, right? Because I'll probably do a series where I go through my own tutorials. No, let me rephrase that. Where I go through other people's tutorials to learn things myself. Like for example, I would love to get much more familiarized with Python itself as a language. There's a lot of functions, there's a lot of built-in things, and then I want to move that into then pandas, NumPy, and do a lot more machine learning. Because I got my TensorFlow certifications, but I haven't, since then, I'm not doing it every day. So I feel like I've already forgotten a lot, and I would love to go through it, shake the cobwebs out, and do some machine learning again. So stuff like that, I'll probably use this, and then also Google Colab. But anytime I can, I'll share this kind of stuff out. There will be things that I'll probably only have shared with subscribers. So I would highly recommend subscribe to my channel and support if you can. That's really, really greatly appreciated, and I'll give you access to more things because of it. But this is one that I will just share with everyone so you have it. So before I push it up, there are certain things in here that I don't want to send up. So I'll go to my Git Ignore file, and I'm going to ignore a few things. So one of them, for example, is .vs Code. I don't care to send this. And then also the test results. I don't care to send that. Everything else, though, I think is fine. Oops. Yeah, I don't care about test results. And then I think everything else is okay. Yeah. Okay. So there you go. So over here, stage all my changes. I'm going to say this was automate dynamic websites. Woo! Just for you, and Chameleon. Just for you. Just for you. And Chameleon, I appreciate you. Thanks for hanging out on stream and asking that question. That's the whole point of the stream. If it's something that I know, then I would love to help. If it's something I don't know, then we will learn together and find out. I don't know everything, so yes, people, you'll get me. You'll get me with some stuff. I'll be like, and I won't know what you're talking about. But yeah, we can search things, and we're good at googling the stuff. And Camille asks, will this video remain online? So the video will be on my Twitch channel. So if you go to the channel, and then there will be like a videos tab. The raw recording will be in that videos tab, but it's for subscribers only. So again, another reason to subscribe, so that way you can review some of the videos, and it'll only stay on there for 14 days. I'm currently working to see how I can be better at grabbing some highlights and stuff and like posting it onto YouTube. Because there are some bits that I think would be valuable, right? But I don't want to just get the whole recording and throw it on my YouTube channel, because that's probably not high quality content. So I need to have the time, spend some time on how I edit the videos and how, do that. I'm a busy person, so I need help. Anyway, there it is. So we pushed it up. Huzzah, we got there. So I called it Python stream. So just go to my username here, github.com/lsnowman, and then Python stream, and that will be the repo I just pushed up. And I'll probably keep adding things to this. Just it's a very generic repo, and I don't want to keep adding repos every day, right? That would not be a good idea. League's Orb, I know the feeling. I haven't been doing front-end React in about 2 to 3 months, and I played around with it yesterday. I felt like a noob, even though I had been coding in React for like 2 years before that. I know, right? Like I spent a whole year just studying machine learning over and over and over every single day, listening to machine learning podcasts and doing a bunch of stuff with it. And then once I got the promotion and am now working in a very machine learning heavy product, like the products I'm working on right now are built on top of models, I haven't touched it since. And I'm sad about that. So, like I said, I want to get back into it because, yeah, it'll just be a good idea, right? And I want to get deeper into things like transformers and whatnot, the GPT-2, the GPT-3. There's some things that I think would be really, really cool to get into, and I just want to make sure I have a good foundation first before I do so. So, anyway. All right, moving on. moving on, 'cause we have about 50 minutes left. So we did this. How to automate a dynamic web page, done. So we have some questions to go over. And let's see. The first one's from Vern. So Vern, you're still here? Yes. I had some interview question about testing API requests that I'd like you to cover. Yes, yes, yes. So Vern, in chat. I don't know how many questions you have. If you want to do one at a time, or if you want to just like throw them all out and either way, hit me with those questions and we will. Am I going to be coding? Do I get to code stuff? Because if I get to, I'll be super stoked about that. It's fine if they're only like theory and stuff like that too. I'm okay with that, but hopefully I can code. My dog is dying in the back. We're both coughing like crazy. My dog just looked at me like, yep. 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 Ooh, maybe some coding? Okay, sweet. Sweeto, sweeto. Let me get my stuff ready then. This is just for you, Vern. New file. API interview questions? I don't know. We'll call it this for now. We'll call it this for now and see what happens. There we go. Now my dog is going really crazy. I'll leave Postman up, I guess, too, just in case I need to do Postman-y things. But hit me with a question, Vern, so we can dive right in. By the way, that working on thing that I'm looking at here, you are able to check out what I'm working on if you want to also see that by just running this command. If you do the bang working on, it should show you. It'll post something that looks kind of like that. Check out what Carlos is currently working on. What's coming up? Whoa, and with a link to it. And it's just a link to this gist, so you can see what's going on. Not sure because I didn't get an actual thing. It was more of a theory, but we have worked with API that does similar stuff. Just hit me with the question. Just hit me with whatever the question is, and then I'll start talking. Here is one. User button 1234. Thank you so much for following. Thank you, thank you, thank you, and welcome, welcome. We got a good group of people here. We're all learning. Apparently, my stream is very Python specific, which I guess is fine. For some reason, I thought it was going to be very like testing specific, but that's okay. But yes. Okay, Gleeksorp, I'll go with Vern's, and then we can circle back if we still have time to yours. So Vern asks, how would you test this? Put movie 6465 question mark tag equals comedy. How would you test delete tag comedy? Okay. Okay. That's okay. Yeah, this, because I don't have an endpoint to actually hit, this sounds like it's very much theory. So I'm just going to go into Postman because that's probably the best place to go. I wish I could minimize this. Is there a way for me to like, because I don't want anything on the left side here. It's fine. I'll survive. Don't save. Don't save. No worries, Gleeksorp. Thank you. I really appreciate it. So, okay. So we have this. The get is a put. And then you're going to have some base URL thing. So some base URL / movie. Something like that. Something like that. So how would you test this? Okay, so this sounds like the interview question you got then. So let's see. So the first things first, right? This, I would just hit send, right? It's not going to work because we don't have a base URL, but I would want to see what this is doing first off. What you want to look at is what are all of the inputs that this request has, right? Because there's, before you even click send, there's a lot of variables. And the thing about variables is that they're placeholders that you can then replace with some value, right? So the first one we have is the base URL. So what is the actual base URL that I can hit? Are there multiple? If there are different versions, is there version 1 versus version 2? Do they both behave the same way, right? So the base URL is the first input. It's the first variable. And so I would ask, what are these environments? What are the base URLs? So then I have a collection of them and can test this endpoint against those, right? I'm aware of what the environment ecosystem looks like. So first variable. The second thing would be, this is the actual route, right? Or endpoint, right? Movie. So whatever the base URL is, doesn't matter, /movie, looks like we're getting a movie back. And so, because we're hitting the movie endpoint, I would assume that the return I'm going to receive is going to be a movie. And so how would I determine that something is a movie, right? They might have something that says movie equals false, right? The MovieDB API that we had actually said that, right? It said, is this a movie or not? And so I would expect it, if I'm hitting the movie endpoint, I only get movies back. It would be weird if I hit movie and I got a TV show back, right? So right there, we're making an assumption based off of that, right? But I think that makes sense, right? I think that's a fair oracle to have. If you hit the movie endpoint, you get movies back. The next thing is you have a path variable. And we can do set as variable, right? Maybe we just call it, this looks like a movie ID. I could be way wrong. Set as a new variable, select scope. I just want it to be, feels bad, man. Okay, hold on. I didn't want it to be, I just wanted to say movie ID. I thought I was going to be cool about it, but it wasn't. And let me do this, because I forgot what it was. 6465, okay. Movie ID. And we'll set that. So here you go. Here's another variable, right? Would be the movie ID. And so now you have positive and negative tests, right? If I pass in a valid movie ID, I expect to get only that movie. I don't expect to put in the movie for the Suicide Squad and then I get the Avengers back, right? That would be bad behavior. So the movie ID is another input. But now you have things like, don't mind, typing English is hard today. I know, right? But now you have things like those negative tests. So just like the MovieDB API, where we were like, wait a second, they have boundaries. They said that the only valid inputs were 1 to 1,000. Okay, we tested that assumption, and we did some boundary testing. We tried 0, sure enough it failed. We tried 1,001, and sure enough it failed. And so now the movie ID is another variable that you could test, right? And you can probably think of a lot of different examples that would pass, examples that would fail, and you would want to see if something fails, what does it look like? What are the different types of ways it can fail? What information do we want to provide when it fails? What information do we want to provide when it works, when it is valid? What do we do there? Right, so another variable that you can test now. And the last one is this tag, right? Is this the only query parameter they have? Are there other things I can add to this? Another question. What are valid tags? If I say something that doesn't exist, what's going to be returned? Does the API still work and just default to something? Does it not work and say you have an invalid tag? There's another variable here as well, right? And this is just assuming from this one string, the put. So now the put is another variable, right? Because what if I do a get on this? So notice how each one of these pieces is a variable that you could test. And the problem with a question like how would you test this is, what are they looking for? Right? Are they just looking for you to just show your creativity and what things you would try? If comedy is a string, could you put something in there, some JavaScript, and could you run something on their system? You can come up with so many different things to test, so many different inputs, right? But the key here is to identify what all these variables are, because each one of these variables is a sandbox for input, and you can really pass whatever you want into it. And then from there, think about the response. Once you have the response has things like what status code does it have? How long did it take? You can now think about performance. Should it always be under 5 seconds? Should it always be under 2? What would be the SLO here? Right? Maybe the SLO is that it should always be under 2 seconds. So now you have a test that's monitoring that. right? That's monitoring is only taking 2 seconds, and every time it goes to like 2.5, it raises a flag. And if you see it go 2.5 1,000 times, then you raise an alert and you actually alert a team. You see what I mean? And I can go on and on and on and on about different inputs and everything. But I don't know if that's what they're looking for. And so that's why I try to ask clarifying questions for what environments do I have? What do you have a max number of movie ID? Could I do negative numbers? Is it the same error if I put a negative number or if I put an incorrect tag? Yada, yada, yada. So anyway, I hope that helps, Vern. I hope that helps. Notice how just based off of that string that you gave me, there's a whole bunch that you can cover. There's a whole bunch that you can test, that you can check for, right? And I covered things like security. I checked things like functionality. I checked things doing negative testing, negative experiences, and what responses you get from that. We even did performance and how performance is the API and adding either functional tests or monitors against that. A lot. There's a lot. So, Leaksorb says, I wonder if the developer wanted that route to update the movie's tags. Yeah, it's kind of interesting, right? Because you're not passing anything in, and so it's almost as if you're saying the only thing that you're really setting here is the tag. Right? It's the only thing that you're setting with this put. And so functionality-wise, it's like, okay, if we do comedy, it's going to set, it's going to set it to just comedy. Is it appending comedy to the existing tags? Is it setting all of the tags to just one called comedy? Like, exactly right. So I think Gleeksorb, it seems like you're understanding it, of all the different types of testing you can do against this thing. And yeah, maybe that's what they're looking for. Maybe that's what they're looking for. And then Vern asks, how would you test delete tag comedy? I mean, you do the delete, and did it get deleted? And if you pass in the wrong tag or movie, same problem, right? So it'd be the same thing again. You'd have whatever your base URL is, and then you have your /movie/movie ID, and then you have your same thing that you had before, right? And then you have your tag, the tag of comedy. Again, I'm just throwing it up here, but yeah. So why the tag? Shouldn't I just need the movie ID? Why do I need the tag? Like, I just want to delete the thing. So here's delete. I just want to delete the movie. Why is tag important here? Are you just deleting the comedy tag? Are you deleting the whole movie? Right. So looking at this, it looks like I'm only deleting the comedy tag. Is that what they're expecting? So maybe do the delete the tag, and then get the movie by ID, and is comedy no longer there? See. Yeah. I wonder if the developer wanted to blah, blah, blah. Great job, you get the job. Thank you. Yes, I got the job. That one, they left off the movie ID. It was only the tag. Yeah, I mean, so if they only did this, then this looks bad, because what are they expecting this to do? So immediately my first question is this actually the right thing? Because looking at this is either deleting all tags with comedy, right? So every movie is no longer a comedy, right? You're deleting all of them, which sounds interesting. Like, I would be so curious to hear, is that what you really want to do? Why would you want to make an endpoint that deletes the comedy from every movie in your system? Right? It makes more sense to say, like, by a movie or something like that, by a category, something like that. But doing this, it looks as if it's going to delete every comedy tag on every movie. And if that's what they expect, I would love to hear why. Why are we doing this? What's the use case for it? And then once I'm convinced, cool. If I'm not convinced, then cool. I also caught the issue, because this does not look like a valuable operation to me. So, Yeah, I have just questions. I just have questions. It's a weird way to write an API. Yeah, tag seems odd now. We need to actually submit now to get past our assumptions. And I mean, I can't submit because I don't have the endpoint, right? So it was a more theoretical question than here's an actual URL you can test this against. So I hope that helps, Vern. It's an interesting way to go about this. It looks bad to me, and I would have so many questions, and I would ask clarifying stuff and say like, help me understand why this endpoint exists. Like, how is it used? Give me that use case, because right now it looks not great. I don't understand why you would want to delete all of the comedy tags. Is that really what it's doing, or is that just my assumption? Help me understand. You know what I mean? Yeah. So what do you think of a question like that in an interview? Yes. I don't know why you wouldn't ask that. Right? Because otherwise you're basing your entire response on your own assumptions. And believe it or not, that might be a failure of the question. If you go based off of your assumptions, then you're probably going to get the answer wrong. So a lot of times in interviews, they want to see how you think and how you're processing the problem. If you just say, well, I would just do delete send and then see that it got deleted. If that's your answer, I wouldn't hire you, because you are not testing the assumptions. You're not testing the behavior, the why of it. You're just saying, okay, that's fine. Even though in my gut, I know this feels weird. This is a weird endpoint, right? So I'm going to raise that. I'm going to say, this feels weird. Help me understand. I think that's totally valid, right? To say, when would somebody hit this? Like, where in the flow does this endpoint actually, like, is it meant to delete every comedy tag on every movie? Because that's what it looks like. And then ask the question, is that what it's supposed to do? Help me understand what is the purpose of this endpoint, and then I can be more specific in my testing and my strategy there. Because right now it looks like not a great experience. That's something that I would respect as an interviewer, rather than you just assuming that we did everything right. And now you're like, well, how would I test? You see what I mean? Like, so I challenge those things. Ask questions, because otherwise your testing is based off of so many assumptions. You could be testing the wrong things. Hope that helps. Hope that helps, Vern. In a lot of my interviews, by the way, I ask very open-ended questions. I ask very, very open-ended questions. It's like one of them, I asked this one person, I gave him context, right? So I gave him a scenario. The scenario was, we work for an e-commerce platform, and we're deciding that we're going to add cryptocurrency as a form of payment. So we already have PayPal, we already have Venmo, credit card, but now we're going to be adding Bitcoin. And that's the feature, Bitcoin. And then from there, all of the questions are based off of that context, right? And so one thing, like as we're going through the value stream and we're talking about things, then with that context, I can say, so what kind of things would you be, like in your integrations of the system, like how would you test this service in isolation? Like what things are you testing for in isolation? And then as we go further on, now you're integrating with the the rest of the website, with the inventory, the storefront. Now that you're integrating with all of that, how are you testing your service once you've combined it and integrated it with all these things? And big questions like that, just to see how they answer. I'm not looking for a right answer, right? I'm not looking for, they better say CI/CD somewhere here in the interview, or else they're not going to get the job. I'm not looking for keywords. I'm not looking for the right answer. I'm just curious what they think, how they go about it, what techniques and strategies are they using. Is it because they're not familiar with them? Is it because they never had to use it before? That kind of stuff, right? So I like those more open-ended questions, but I still like to provide context. So I'm not just saying, how would you test this elevator, right? Because what are you looking for? It's a scary question, because now it's just like, I just want to see how creative you are. How many test cases can you come up with? Is not as valuable of a question to me. So anyway. Anyway. Yeah, there was a lot of discussion around these. Excellent. That's good. Yep, that's good that you had discussions about these. Sounds like you did well in the interview. Is Carlos fuzzy to anyone else besides me? Ruh-roh. I hope not. I hope I'm not fuzzy. Is that a compliment, or are you saying that? On my side, things say it's good. But, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it's something on my side. All right. So, Vern, was there any other questions there, or was that the brunt of it? Was that the brunt of it? How much time do I have left? We got 30 minutes. We got 30. Okay. So, Vern, if you don't say anything, I'm just going to move on. Moving on now. So let's do this one. I think it was just me that you're fussing. All right. How should you handle it? And I think it was from you too, Vern. How should you handle an interview rejection from the point of view of the interviewer and the interviewee? A wonderful question. So, from the point of view of the interviewee, if you get rejected in an interview, you need to, learn, learn from it, right? But you can really only learn from it if you're able to identify what you need to learn, right? It sounds very obvious, but believe it or not, back when I was first getting into management and doing hiring at the beginning, I wouldn't give people feedback, right? That we would just say, all right, thanks for your time, thanks for interviewing with us, and we'll get back to you hopefully within the next few days, right? That's basically how we would end it. And it wouldn't be me rejecting people. It would be our recruiting team. The recruiters would reject people. And I don't know what they would say. I had no idea what they said. I don't know if they said, you smell bad, that's what Carlos said, and that's why we can't hire you. And, or if they said, oh, we want someone else, or you just weren't a right fit. I have no idea the message they told people. But using that approach, I never received questions from candidates asking, what could I have done better? Why did I get rejected? It was super rare for anyone to ever get rejected and say, why did I get rejected? Right? And it's probably because, A, I wasn't giving anyone feedback, and B, the recruiters were rejecting people. And so maybe they thought, oh, if I want any feedback, I have to go through the recruiter, and maybe that's weird, right? And so I don't think that was the right way to go about it as an interviewer. And since then, I have changed things, and I'll get to that here soon. But as an interviewee, you should ask for feedback, right? You need to get that experience and get better from it. Because if all you get is a rejection and you feel bad from it, then it's a huge loss. It's a lose-lose situation. You didn't get the job, and also you didn't learn anything from it, right? So asking for feedback, asking what are the things that I didn't stand out on, or the things that I could improve on, and even asking, let's say, for example, they say, oh, the API side didn't really seem like you knew the differences between, path variables versus query variables versus, and you go, oh, snap, yeah, that's exactly where I felt like I bombed the interview. And so then from there, you take a course on Test Automation U. You learn more about Postman. You go to QA at the Point, and you go to the Postman workshop, and you learn more about it, right? You get better at Postman. And then cool, now you've covered that gap in your knowledge, and now you're knowledgeable about it. And the next time you're asked anything towards that, well, you have something. You can be proactive too, and make your own Postman collections and make a repo with API tests and how you would go about covering this API that exists in the wild with 100% coverage on it. And now when people talk to you, you say, well, here's a repo actually. Before you even start the interview, here's a repo I have and how I covered API tests, since that's something that's important for this position. So now you're doing not just reactive learning, but you're also proactively trying to get ahead of it, so that way that's never a problem ever again. So learning from it is the thing that you should do. Being confident to ask, why did I get rejected? How could I improve? And even for resources if they have it. Stuff like that. And those were the questions around API they asked that I had. Cool. I have asked that on other platforms in a similar way, but not sure if that was me or not. Asking for feedback, do you just go through the email and ask? What if they use no reply email? You should know the person you talk to. I would hit them up on LinkedIn or Twitter or something. If that is weird to them, if them like, oh, why are you connecting with me on LinkedIn? Thank goodness you dodged that bullet. Thank goodness you got rejected, because that is a huge red flag if the interviewer doesn't want to help you grow. So if they ghost you, if they ignore you, if they get defensive for whatever reason, that you're asking them for feedback, then thank goodness you didn't get that job, because that would have been a toxic leadership to be under. So, yes. Like I said, you should know who you talked to, right? Like, you literally have their name in front of you. So if they did a virtual meeting and they added you to the calendar, you probably have their emails there. Or you hit them up on LinkedIn and say, I want to connect. I know I got rejected, but I still want to connect. I mean, that's you literally throwing like an olive branch and saying, hey, I want to connect anyway, and I would love to learn a little bit more as to what I can do to be better. There's nothing weird or awkward about that. It's only weird if you make it weird. All right. So hopefully for the interviewee, it's pretty straightforward. For the interviewee, it really is just you get rejected, learn from it, and be proactive with that. For the interviewer, there's a little more responsibility. So for the, like I said before, when I was first doing hiring, all the rejections were done by the recruiters. I wasn't part of any feedback or anything like that. I just told them, nope, we're not hiring them. And they said, okay. And I have no idea what happened after that. Well, eventually I got some, I was at Jane.com at the time, and we got some formal training on how to do hiring. Not just the interview itself, but like how to have quality candidate pipelines, how to structure the actual interview and the process. How many interviews is too many? How many people is too many, right? We would have like 8 people on like at a table. We'd have like 8 people sometimes, 5 to 8 people. Sometimes it's the entire team just to interview this person, and we thought that was a good idea. Come to find out, that was actually a terrible idea. And there was data to back it up as to why that was a bad idea. But we didn't know any better, right? We had seen other companies interview that way, and so we just figured this is how everyone does it, and that was false. So we actually got like formal hiring training, and that changed very much how I thought of the interview process. And it became very much more about the experience for the interviewee rather than we just need to filter people out. So it became a lot more personal. And so because of that, I changed my approach in how I did interviews. And now I only have like 2 people, me and one other person that interview the person. So there's 3 people. Sometimes we'll have a third person. Like, it's very rare that I have a third person with me on the interview. But so it's usually me, one other person interviewing, and we do 3 interviews max. Usually we know what we need to know after 2 interviews, but sometimes you need a third one because it's might be like for a higher position, like a director or manager or something. So you do a third one, but for the most part, the average one we do is 2. And I take a very straightforward approach now. So if I know that we're not going to hire the person, I tell them on the call. I also tell them if they're doing well, by the way. So if I'm like, wow, that was a really great answer, like I tell them that, right? I know some interviewers that will just be like super straight faced and just, okay, yeah, okay, thanks for the answer. And they move on to the next question. And then you as the interviewee, you're like, did I do good or did I do bad? Like, you don't know. And that's terrifying. That's very stressful. And you're already in this stressful environment. And so for them to respond in that way and make you feel that way is, again, I have learned is not the right approach to go about things. And so I want people to feel comfortable. I want them to be able to show their best selves, to be able to be set up for success, really show what they got. So I don't try to trick people with questions. Which is something that people would do as well. They would ask trick questions to see if did you catch the thing? I think stuff like that is, now I think like it's very sneaky. It's you're setting them up to fail. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So I don't do anything like that anymore. So as the interviewer, it is your responsibility to make sure the interviewee has an awesome experience. And one thing that I tell people as I'm talking to them about this is, at the end of the interview, even if they're rejected, I want them to think, I want to apply again because I would love to work here. And I know what I need to do so then I can apply again. Like, for me, that right there is the secret sauce. The secret sauce. How can I make sure they feel so good, even through rejection, that they still want to work here, but they now know what they need to do so they can apply again and be successful the second time around, right? So as the interviewer, you have a lot of responsibility to help the person feel welcome, help them feel comfortable, ease their nerves. If someone is shaking, taking a break and a pause and say, hey, you know what, I can tell that you're nervous right now. Like, let's break from this technical question and ask something else that's maybe a little more personal, you know, and make it so then they start talking again and they get into their vibe again, you know, and then, okay, here, let's go back to this interview question and stuff like that, you know, like you're really taking care of them, and making them feel like, you know, their time is valuable. You want them there, you know, and you want them to succeed. You want to hire them. As an interviewer, you don't want to reject people. That sucks because now you're wasting more time and more money. You want to hire people. And so rejections suck for you too. And so how can you make it so then you have the highest chance of people not getting rejected and people coming back, right? So like I said, the interviewer has a lot more responsibility, but they should be thinking about that person, thinking about their experience, making sure that they feel good. So, ding, ding, ding! Carlson's interview of the year. Thank you. It's taking I've done now. I don't know how many interviews I've done at this point. Hundreds of interviews. So many. Some that are like one-on-ones. Some that are like I interview like a whole classroom, like completely different ones and whatnot. But in all of them, it's that same thing, right? You want them to be excited about it. You don't want them to be intimidated. You know, like, yeah. If they're intimidated, then what can they do so then that way they're ready, so they're not intimidated? You know what I mean? Like, you want them to feel good and have the tools to be successful. Whew. There you go. Thank you. Gleek Sorpen Vern, thank you very much. But anyway. There's that. And how much time we got left? It makes total sense. Human-centric. Exactly right. I don't want it to be challenge-centric. I want it to be human-centric. And that's a great way to put it. I think a lot of people focus on what's the right challenge to ask someone. How do I properly assess someone? And even though it's a good question, right, it's fair because you do need to know how to assess people. They don't think about how do we assess that we're good interviewers? You know what I mean? How do we know that we have a good interview process? Are you just popping questions on people, or are you saying, hey, by the way, just so you know, here's the kind of questions you're going to receive so you can prepare for it. You're going to take this coding challenge, but it's going to be something that we're going to do collaboratively. You can use the internet. I mean, we're doing it virtually, so use Google however you want. But if you do that, could you please share your screen? Because part of the interview is us knowing the things, you know, what do you search for? How do you go researching things? How do you find stuff out? You know, and pair with them. You know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff. I'm not trying to remove the tools that you would normally use as a developer or as a tester. You know, like, yeah. You should do a training. Maybe. Yeah, it's not a bad idea. I actually interviewed at a company that they didn't provide me any feedback, but asked for feedback about their process. All right. Yeah, priorities are reversed, but you know, it's fair. It's fair to ask the candidate for some retrospective ammo, but yeah, it would have been better if they provided you some feedback and then also asked for feedback themselves, right? I think that would have been better. But just saying, oh, you didn't get the job, but how do we do? That just sounds like, what? Oh my god. Yeah, this is awkward. So you're not going to get the job, but like, did you like that little bag that we gave you before you left? Like, it was a pretty cool bag, right? Was there any, did you like the pen or, like, that sounds really not the greatest. The irony. Yeah, that sounds weird. Anyway. All right. So the last question for the day, of course, unless anyone else has anything, the last question for the day is, what's the difference between BDD and TDD? Whew. Tell them to listen to Twitch TV/Carlos Kidman. Aw, Gleeksorb, you're so nice. So for me, hiring is like it's a very tender topic for me, just because I've been through a lot of really negative experiences. Like one of them, for example, I was interviewing at a company here in Utah, and I show up, and there are 6 people on the table, and it's a super long table, super long table, right? Like, whew, the kind of table that's like comically long. Like if 2 people were on either side of it, like if they're on either side of it, like the person's like, "Hey, can you hear me?" And over here's like, "What did you say?" Like it was like comically long table. Anyway, so there's 6 people on the other side of the table, and then there's me on one side by myself. On top of that, there are 3 people on a phone. So I had like 9 or 10 people interviewing me at the same time, and they were asking me some pretty advanced. I know ominous. They're asking me some pretty advanced stuff around C#, but I was nailing them. Every question they asked me, I was nailing it. And in my mind, I'm like, man, I'm kicking some serious butt. But eventually, one of them said, "Wait a second. So on your resume here, I see that you don't have a degree." And I was like, "Uh-huh." And I'm like, "So I'm gonna ask you some different questions then." I'm like, "Okay." And he started asking me very basic programming questions. A lot of them I knew, but eventually, I mean, I knew all of them until the last one he asked me was, "What is?" I know, right, Vern? He said, "What is an access modifier?" And I was like, a blank, complete blank in my head. Like, access modifier. I'm like, so I thought for a few seconds, and finally I just said, Could you actually explain what an access modifier is? Because I'm sure I've worked with it, because I've been doing C# for so long now. I'm sure I've worked with it. I just don't recognize the name. And people started chuckling. People are laughing in front of me, laughing, looking at each other like, this guy doesn't know access modifier, you know. And one of the guys was like, "Well, access modifier is something like public or private." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I know this." So I'm like, I know what access modifiers are. And so I explained, you have like protected and seal, and I started explaining different ones, what they did, some good use cases around them. I thought I saved the question. Right? I thought that even though I didn't know it was called access modifier, I knew a lot about them. But they're like, that's something that like is, we need someone who has a foundational knowledge of programming and this and that. And I got rejected and right there, right then and there I got rejected. And I remember feeling just so angry, right? I was just like, what the freak? You know, like, that was messed up. Why'd they laugh at me? Like, that was ridiculous. And so I went back to my car and I was fuming, you know, just because of that. But I could have just been mad and said, well, they're stupid. Good thing I didn't work there. I mean, good thing I didn't work there, because that's when I went to Jane.com. But you better believe that I now know what access modifiers are. I was like, okay, what it told me was I had been working in such advanced stuff that, yeah, you know what, actually, there's some advanced topics in C# that I don't know why it does that. Huh. Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't know how to build that myself, actually. And so I identified a really big gap in my knowledge. And I didn't go to the university. I don't have a college degree. Still, I don't have a degree. But I didn't learn the foundations. I didn't learn like the fundamentals of C#. And so I just dove right into advanced stuff because I needed to solve problems for work. And so I was like, well, shoot. All right, I need to work on the foundations and really understand the basics of C#, because that will help me be better at the advanced stuff. So that's what that taught me, and I then worked on that. And when I went to Jane.com, I nailed that interview. And I should have been like, you want to know what an access modifier is? Because I know exactly what it is. But no, they didn't ask for that. But yeah. Vern gets it. Believe it, from Naruto. Yeah. So it's stuff like that, right? And so even though I was able to take that and learn from it and get better at programming and C# because of it, I never want anyone to feel the way that I felt after that interview. The way I felt in that moment, a group of people staring at me, laughing at me, the shame I felt waiting in the elevator, and they're all still there looking at me as I'm like trying to close the elevator door as quick as I could because I was, I was embarrassed. Like I never want people to ever feel like that in an interview that I have, and so it's things like that where I'm very passionate about the interviewing process and hiring because I've had some pretty nasty interviewing experiences myself, and that's just one bad one. I have another one that's pretty bad too, but I won't bore y'all with that. Anyway, so yes, I know you didn't ask about this, but hey, I want to tell you about access modifiers. Yeah. So hey, how do you like? You want some access modifiers with that ketchup? Yeah. Can I get a number 3 with some access modifiers on the side, please? Now I talk about access modifiers everywhere. And come to find out, I'm not even in C# anymore. I haven't been in years. And in Python, everything's public, right? So, like, anyway. All right, so yeah, sorry. Last thing, do I have stop time? Because I went on a tangent there. Yeah, we got a bit of time. What's the difference between BDD and TDD? This is a very common question I get, by the way. What's the difference between BDD and TDD? How best to answer in 10 minutes. So BDD, for those that don't know, BDD means behavior-driven development. TDD stands for test-driven development. Neither of these have anything to do with testing the way that you think about software testing. Just to throw that out there, they're not really testing focused. It's more about collaboration, understanding, using examples. Like it's very collaborative. It's more of a design approach than anything, right? So it's not just because like with test-driven development or TDD, just because you start with like a test, that's not the goal. The goal isn't having like 100% test coverage. The goal is to think about the design up front, create these specs, and say, all right, given these specs, here's what I need to be able to build the things in this way. So that way they're testable, they're modular, they're portable, that kind of stuff. It's more of a design approach than a testing approach. So Gleeksorb says, BDD has a B and TDD has a T. Yes, the tautology right there. That's the difference between them. No, so I like to have a process that uses both of them. And again, this is just my personal preference. I know many great developers that don't do TDD. Right? And even though that's fine, I have seen enough power from TDD that I am a TDD person myself because I just like to write the tests and design things in that way. But that doesn't mean that every developer has to do TDD. No, I don't think so. Again, it's a design approach more so than a testing approach. You kind of just get automated testing out of like for free. It's more of a side effect than anything. So BDD, behavior-driven development, is all about. Let me see if I can share a. If we look for DevOps life cycle thing images. Let's see if we can find one. Ugh, I hate all of these. Ugh. Every one of these that you see is just so bad. Anytime you see one that says testing as a phase, just ignore it. Terrible, terrible diagram. Anyway, I'm showing you this. I'm showing you this to make a point. Any one of these, right? It doesn't really matter. Pretend there was no testing phase, because testing is not a phase. So in BDD, you're trying to get the planning, the code, and the building, all of this part here, and you're trying to think of holistic behaviors and the feature not just in isolation, but again with many things, and how the customer is going to be using these things. So it doesn't have to be on just the UI, right? With the UI, it's easier because you're thinking, well, how's the customer going to click this drop down and select this thing? Yeah, sure. But you can do this with really anything, any system, any service. You can think about those things as well, right? How do you want the behaviors to be created, and how are you going to observe these behaviors and be able to make it so then it's easy to deploy right? So for example, you don't want to build this whole massive thing. You want it to, what would V1 look like? Why is this V1? Should this be part of 1.1? No, let's include that in V1 as well. And things like that. All of that is BDD. It's testing assumptions. It's collaborating and creating an understanding. It's that kind of a thing, right? Unfortunately, when people think of BDD, they immediately think of things like gherkin or cucumber. And that's not BDD. Those are like tools that you can use to help with BDD, right? Using a common domain language, sure. But I don't use gherkin or cucumber or anything like that, and yet I'm still doing BDD, right? So it's more about the behaviors, the holistic, how you're doing things, how would you observe things, how would you operate things, how would you learn, how could you pivot and adapt quickly, so those kinds of things, right? You're building those kinds of behaviors and using examples and scenarios to drive that. So instead of just saying, oh, this thing has to be fast, well, you define what fast means. Oh, this thing has to be high quality. Define what that means and use examples to prove that, or have some evidence of that and say, if it does this thing, then we know it's a high quality thing. Then that means it's performant, and you're thinking of those kinds of things as early as possible, right? That's the BDD side of it. TDD is really just here. TDD is really just in the build part. And I mean, you can also say it's in the release part, but it's just now that you've gotten all of this understanding as a team, now you're saying, okay, now I got to build this thing. Now in order to build it, what do I need to do in order to design this with all of these quality attributes in mind? And now you're using the BDD to help you with your TDD. Does that make sense? Geez, Carlos, tell us how you really feel, right? So I don't know if that helps out. But like I said, BDD is more about this team collaboration and communication and understanding. TDD is about how am I going to actually build these things with all these different behaviors and quality attributes in mind. Now I got to implement it. Here's what I have to be able to do, right? So it's very low level TDD, where BDD is higher level, right? Holistic, not so, more tactic and specific, right? And that's really it. Shoot. There are different flavors of TDD, right? And in one of my streams, I went over that, right? There's one that was very much the red-green refactor of TDD, and we wrote the test first and then refactored it, and you saw me go from file to file to file to file, right, back and forth. There was times when I said, I want the function to look like this, behave like this, and then we wrote the function. Like, there's different flavors of TDD. So you kind of do the one that works best for you and your team, and again, like, your flavor of TDD might be something that is not someone else's cup of tea. There it is. I practiced that in the mirror. I think that was a helpful explanation of BDD and TDD. Good. So if you continue watching the stream, I mean, you will see me do TDD, right? You'll see me do that. You'll see the different. I'll switch between the different flavors. I'm not going to write my tasks and then make sure they fail. Like, you'll see me write a test and just put pass under it, which would make the test pass. Like, you don't have to be this purist TDD practitioner, right? I'm not. I just like to think about my design up front and think of those behaviors and do that. So anyway, there it is. And I think with that, we are at time, folks. We are at time. For those of you that are still here, thank you so much for hanging out. Thanks so much for watching. Like I said, if you haven't subscribed already, please do so. There's going to be a lot of things that you get because you're a sub. For example, just the access to these videos. You can only access them if you're a subscriber. Otherwise, you don't get to see them and tiers. But it helps me out a lot. It makes it so then it supports me, the stream, and makes it so then I can go to my boss and say, hey, keep letting me stream. But then also any contributions, donations, sub, anything like that, I use for the community, multiple communities. So it's also just helping other people. All right, so tomorrow I will be back. We will be noon or 12 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Some of the things that we're going to be working on, I think in the near term, we'll probably do some Python programming. We'll probably go through some tutorials, right? Whether it's like Free Code Camp or Real Python or something like that. I have a lot of people asking me that some of my stuff is really advanced. And so they want some more like fundamentals, like, hey, I'm learning Python or I'm barely getting into Python. Could you do more like introductory videos? Could you go through, here's a tutorial I did that I didn't even know how to set it up? Stuff like that, right? So I think doing a series around tutorials and doing it together might be really helpful. That way you can ask your questions and things on stuff. I can explain it and pause on things. And then it helps me just learn more like the fundamentals of Python. Just like the access modifier thing, right? And then from there, we do have some other pieces. We did kind of touch on web automation with Python Pylenium. We can go into it more if people are interested. I do eventually want to Dockerize our GraphQL service that we built to test PyClinic a little better. And then at the beginning of the stream, I talked about this, doing some machine learning with Python and TensorFlow. So these are kind of the things that we have. And next up. Whew. Foundations, though. I know, right? Freaking foundations, man. Alrighty then, everybody. If you're in the U.S., happy holidays. If you are not, sucks to be you. No, I'm just kidding. If you're not, I hope you still have a quality day. And I will see y'all tomorrow.